Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Monica McCarrick. Tori and her twin sister Lily Ball were born in September 2007 to parents Monica McCarrick and Michael Ball, who lived in San Diego, California. Their relationship was difficult from the start, partly due to their 10-year age gap. Monica struggled with substance abuse, which often led to her run-ins with the police. In 2006, she was arrested for domestic violence and given probation, but her aggressive behavior continued, eventually leading to the couple's divorce. Following the split, Michael filed for custody of the twins in 2009. Monica's life took a new turn. She began dating Robert Paulson, her first love. They had been friends for over 10 years, and their long-distance relationship began on Thanksgiving Day 2009 when Monica discovered her ex's social media page and contacted him. They began communicating as friends. However, Robert was in a relationship with another girl named Jill. In April 2010, a tragic event occurred when Jill took her own life with Robert's gun. Robert had a passion for guns and owned a collection that included a samurai sword and an agile rifle. After this heartbreaking incident, Monica supported Robert through his grief and they became closer, eventually starting a romantic relationship. In May 2010, Monica and the children moved to Pennsylvania. Their romance progressed quickly, leading to their engagement just days later. Monica was very happy during this time. She became a devoted mother, worked as a manager at a dental office, and pursued further education. Robert was also happy, and it seemed like their lives were improving. Unfortunately, this story would not have a happy ending. In August 2010, Monica and Robert moved to California while still planning their wedding. They rented an apartment in a residential area in Fairfield. Monica was looking for a school for her daughters and had obtained her license to practice dentistry. Robert supported her and admired her dedication as a mother to ensuring a good future for her daughters. He appreciated her calm demeanor. Robert worked for a film crew, which required him to travel for filming, resulting in him being absent for long periods of time. On September 9, 2010, just a month after moving to California, Robert was called away on a long business trip to film a movie in Minnesota. This left him with no choice but to leave, which upset Monica. She was not ready to let him go, as she still had unresolved issues from the move and wanted to improve their life together. Monica nevertheless agreed to let Robert go on the business trip. At first, everything seemed fine, but about 3 weeks after he left, Robert began to notice that Monica's behavior had changed significantly. She began to act very strangely. Monica discovers a script written by Robert that depicts a horror story about a man who chases children down a beach, ultimately leading to their deaths. Monica understands that the script is about her family and fears for her children's safety. However, Robert denied all of this. Robert insisted that it was a work of fiction related to his work. Throughout Robert's business trip, Monica frequently brought up her concerns in conversation. Eventually, she began to claim that Robert's previous girlfriend had died because of him. Monica suspected that Robert was involved with another woman at the time and believed that his affair contributed to his ex-girlfriend's tragic decision. Robert spent hours on the phone and texting Monica to calm her down. Unfortunately, this only worked for a short time before she began to express new suspicions. People who came into contact with her during this time noticed her paranoid behavior. Monica wanted Robert to stay home and objected to his long business trips. Robert reassured her that his trip to Minnesota would be over soon and that she was eagerly awaiting his return. On the day before his return, Robert's manager informed him that he would need to stay in Alaska for another 5 to 10 days to finish filming, as they had found the ideal location for some of the missing scenes. When he shared this news with Monica, she became extremely upset. She tried her best to convince him to return home with her and the children, saying that she could not handle the situation on her own. Although she pleaded for help, Robert felt helpless and asked her to be patient a little longer. Monica was not completely alone, her family supported her. However, Robert noticed that her mental state seemed unstable. Her friends, who remained in contact with her during this time, often mentioned this in their conversations. On September 25, Monica contacted her friend Regina, expressing that she feared for her life. Monica truly believed that Robert and his mother might harm her. She asked Regina to contact the police if anything happened to her. That same day, Monica contacted her friend Maritza to express her concerns about Robert and his family. She stressed that she felt unsafe and feared for the safety of her children. Maritza called her to discuss the matter further. During the conversation, Monica shared that her suspicions were related to a script Robert had written that depicted a murder involving a woman and her children. Maritza reassured Monica, and for a moment things seemed to calm down, but the calm did not last long. Maritza received another alarming text message 3 days later, on September 29th. In this message, Monica claimed that someone wanted to kidnap her children and harm her. She also contacted another friend, Pamela, expressing her fear that Robert intended to harm her. Monica was genuinely afraid for her safety, but she also hoped that her fears were paranoid. She stressed that if she or her children went missing, it was important to contact the police and hold Robert accountable. Unfortunately, Pamela was unable to visit Monica this time because she was in another city visiting her mother. The conversation ended with Monica declaring her intention to go to the police to prove Robert's involvement in the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Jill. However, many of her text messages were inconsistent. She expressed stress about raising her children, feeling overwhelmed by having to deal with the problems on her own. This confused the Pamela, who knew that Robert worked hard to provide for the family. At the same time, Monica often mentioned her desire to be free, to relax, and to enjoy herself. Michael often took the Tori and Lily out, giving Monica a chance to relax. She also had many friends and family to lean on. Not everyone was able to respond immediately to Monica when a problem arose, but they were able to reach her within a few hours to offer their support. They constantly help her. Friends and acquaintances noted that in Pennsylvania, Monica was much calmer and handled everyday problems well, even when she was alone. However, when she moved to California, where all her relatives and friends lived, she became panicky about Robert's absence. From September 29 to October 4, 2010, Monica and her children traveled to San Diego to visit their mother. During this visit, she shared a script written by Robert, which frightened her. She was also concerned about the many weapons stored in the home. She feared that Robert intended to harm them with these weapons and discussed her concerns with her mother. Monica was clearly nervous and anxious about her upcoming wedding. However, after she and her daughters went shopping for wedding dresses, her mood changed. Monica seemed happy and excited, taking many pictures of the dress she had chosen and sending them to friends and family, including one to her grandmother, Terry Faye. They had a close relationship, with her grandmother visiting regularly and supporting her. On October 11th, Monica called her grandmother Terry again and expressed her fear of losing her daughter and her concerns for her own safety. However, during this call, Terry noticed that Monica's behavior was unusual. Monica's situation is confusing. She has moved across the country in search of a better life, hoping to be closer to her family. Her goal is to marry Robert and build a life with him and their children. However, she frequently expresses fears for her safety, especially around Robert. Despite her fear of Robert, she pursues the marriage. Meanwhile, Michael is fighting for custody of their twins. Robert's mother, Roxanne, became increasingly concerned about Monica. While her son was away, she noticed that Monica was losing control. Monica handled things well at first, but as time went on, her instability became more apparent. Roxanne often takes Tori and Lily for walks, giving Monica time to rest. Occasionally, Monica and the children would visit Roxanne. An alarming incident occurred while Monica was sleeping at Roxanne's house. She suddenly woke up around 3 in the morning and began to prepare for something. Roxanne heard a noise and went outside to check what was going on. Monica pointed to a car parked on the street near her house, believing that someone was following her, which made her very nervous. Roxanne, knowing the owner of the car, tried to reassure Monica. The car belonged to a neighbor who had just returned home late from work. He had lived in the area for a long time, was a devoted family man, and did not pose any threat to them. Monica's concerns did not subside, so she took her daughters and went home, insisting she did not feel safe. When she returned home, she began to feel more comfortable. The next morning, she informed Robert's mother, Roxanne, that she was feeling fine. In the afternoon, she called Roxanne at work, saying that a delivery man had come to her house and hinted that he might be part of a plot to harm her. Despite Roxanne's attempts to calm her down, Monica remained restless. She then tried to call her mother, but her mother was at work and could not talk for long. Her mother reassured Monica to calm down. Monica replied that everything was fine and then ended the call. The next morning, October 12th, the neighborhood manager came to Monica's apartment to ask her to move her car. She parked her car blocking several other parking spaces. When the manager knocked on the door, Monica was too scared to open it. After a long conversation through the door, Monica finally agreed to open the door and go outside to park her car properly. During this time, the manager noticed that Monica's 2 daughters, Tori and Lily, were in the apartment and they seemed okay. Monica called in to take time off work so she could get a new hairstyle for her wedding. While she was on the phone, her manager noticed a child crying in the background. Robert later spoke to Monica on the phone and via text messages. He found her messages confusing and included some inappropriate quotes. From what he could understand, it sounded like she was talking about children. One message read, "Let the bunnies go away forever." Robert understood this to be a reference to the custody battle involving Monica's ex-husband, Michael, who was seeking full custody. It was likely that the court would award custody to Michael, which would mean that Lily and Tori could be separated from Monica. With her past issues with substance abuse and mental health, she was at risk of losing her parental rights. However, Robert was busy and didn't think much of the message. That evening, Monica and Robert spoke on the phone. Monica was very difficult to understand, speaking very quickly and seeming to move around her apartment, with a lot of background noise. She hung up several times but called back immediately. She insisted that whatever had happened should be considered an accident. It was unclear what she meant, but her tone was very disturbing. Monica also mentioned that she had planned to start a fire with her children. Suddenly, the fire alarm went off, and he heard Monica scream before the call abruptly ended. Worried, Robert kept calling Monica, but no one answered. Worried, he contacted the police to check on her. It felt like a horrible nightmare, but he had no idea that the situation was much more horrifying than he could have imagined. Monica fed Tori and Lily and tied them to high chairs. She then took a samurai sword from the wall in Robert's office and began to violently attack the children. Within minutes, Monica had killed Tori and Lily and used their bodies to barricade the apartment door before setting the apartment on fire. The neighbors only heard the children's short cries and some noises, which did not arouse any suspicion. When the fire alarm rang, it was too late. The downstairs neighbor noticed smoke coming from the apartment above and called the police. After calling, he quickly ran upstairs and broke down the door, but it wouldn't open. He then tried to enter through the sliding window of the third-floor apartment. Luckily, he was able to reach the window and get in. The room was filled with thick smoke, making it difficult to see. when the neighbor entered the area where the tragic incident with the children took place. The entire floor was covered in blood, and there was a sword and a medicine bottle on the ground, which could have been the murder weapon. Unfortunately, it was too late to save Tori and Lily. When police arrived, they were unable to enter the home immediately because the children's bodies were blocking the front door. After some struggle, they were able to get inside. The entire apartment was filled with smoke, and the fire was in the pantry next to the front door. After the fire was extinguished and the smoke cleared, the rescue team discovered the children's bodies. They also found Monica, who was unconscious and had suffered multiple serious injuries that appeared to be self-inflicted. Monica was rushed to the medical center in critical condition. Her injuries included lacerations to her neck and hands, several severed fingers, and severed tendons. Both ankles were injured, and there was a deep wound to her thigh. During a search of the apartment, police found several weapons, including a loaded rifle, a shotgun, and a loaded pistol. A significant amount of live ammunition was discovered in the hallway, along with a sword and a lighter that Monica used to start a fire in the pantry. 2 high chairs, which were overturned and covered in blood, indicated that the children were eating when the murder occurred, as trays with plates and food were found scattered on the floor. A laptop displaying cartoons was in front of them. The kitchen table was also smeared with blood, suggesting that there was an attempt to clean it hurriedly. Additionally, a thrilling novel by James Patterson about a serial killer was opened to a page that read, "My daughter died." During the analysis of the vial, forensic experts found no dangerous or powerful drugs. During the autopsy, they discovered multiple injuries on Tori and Lily. Tori had 11 cuts on her face and deep wounds on the front of her neck. On her chest, there were 9 shallow cuts and 2 stab wounds. One punctured her lung and the other punctured her heart. Lily had multiple injuries, including 5 cuts on her face and neck and 9 cuts on her chest, including one so severe that it nearly severed her head. The sword had severed Lily's larynx and arteries. The children's arms were the most injured, suggesting the twins had attempted to defend themselves. None of the girls inhaled smoke from the fire, indicating that they were already dead when the fire started, as there was no soot in their lungs. The brutality of their murders shocked all the experts involved in the case. Shortly after being released from the hospital, 27-year-old Monica was arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, arson, attempting to destroy evidence, and obstructing the investigation. Confined to a wheelchair and covered in bandages, she appeared in court on October 26, 2010, where she did not plead guilty. Monica argued that her crime was a result of insanity, leading to her being sent for a psychiatric evaluation from October 2010 to June 2011. A prison psychiatrist met with her more than 10 times, spending around 20 hours in discussions, conducting various psychological tests, reviewing her medical records, and speaking with her family members. The psychiatrist found that when Monica was 14, she had displayed similar self-harming behaviors. At that time, she was diagnosed with a type of attention deficit disorder and prescribed medication to manage it. However, she did not complete her treatment and later began abusing illegal drugs, which resulted in her developing bipolar disorder. The Monica stated that she started drinking alcohol at 12 and began using marijuana at 14, which ultimately led to her becoming addicted to illegal drugs by 18. From 2003 to 2005, she was diagnosed with depression while living in San Diego and received professional psychiatric treatment. After Robert went on a business trip, she relapsed and used drugs throughout September and October 2010. Monica reported experiencing paranoid thoughts, common in heavy users. She confessed to her psychiatrist that she had been heavily intoxicated in the 4 days before the crime. Monica often told her doctor that her addiction made it difficult for her to communicate with her children. As a result, she often tried to stay away from them, sometimes leaving them with strangers. She called her loved ones several times, seeking their help, and they tried to support her. However, the psychiatrist revealed that Monica's problems were not only due to illegal drugs. In the days leading up to the tragic event, she experienced delusions, paranoia, and feelings of being persecuted. She believed that Robert and his mother were planning to kidnap her daughters and torture them, a fear that was heightened by a story Robert wrote. In prison, she told a psychiatrist that she had read in a book the exact time that the attackers would arrive to try to enslave her daughter. The psychiatrist recognized this as a symptom known as reference ideas, in which the patient believes that ordinary events contain hidden messages. Monica was convinced that certain events were destined to happen. Monica believed that this was a sign that her children would be enslaved. In her desperation to save Tori and Lily, she realized that even if she saved them from Robert, she could still lose them if her ex-husband Michael won custody in court. This led her to the tragic conclusion that her daughters needed to be killed. Which she did. However, despite her serious actions, her thought process showed that she was still quite sane, despite some mental health issues. She planned to barricade the door so that it could not be opened immediately and only set it on fire after killing her children, with the intention of covering up what had happened. Another psychiatrist, after speaking with Monica, concluded that she was not fully aware of her actions. He believed that Monica thought she was saving her children when she brutally killed them. On October 25, 2011, while in prison, Monica confided to a fellow inmate that she was hearing voices. By November, she began to have paranoid thoughts, fearing that she would be attacked. In April 2012, she overdosed while still incarcerated. Monica reported using illegal drugs, and prison guards observed that she drank up to 12 cups of coffee a day, which worsened her mental state. She frequently expressed concerns about threats to her life from prison gangs and often attempted to communicate with doctors and other professionals. But her reports were inconsistent, unclear, and sometimes completely false. Her psychological evaluation hearings dragged on. Michael attended the trial and asked not to show mercy to the Monica who'd taken the lives of the babies. The final decision was up to the jury. After hours of deliberation, they concluded that Monica had intentionally killed Tori and Lily. On June 15, 2012, Monica McCarrick was convicted of first-degree murder. The jury sentenced Monica to 2 consecutive life terms in state prison without the possibility of parole. During her trial, she cried. She told the court that she was praying for everyone's well-being, despite her own deteriorating condition. Monica expressed that she loved her daughters. Monica is currently serving her sentence in a California prison and has attempted to appeal her sentence multiple times. On August 22, 2019, an online petition was started, urging the governor of California to overturn Monica's sentence. The petition claims that nearly all psychiatric experts who have reviewed her case believe she was not aware of her actions when the crime occurred. However, as of now, only 144 people have signed the petition, and Monica is still incarcerated. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Catherine Pileggi. Ronald Vinci was born on August 16, 1940, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he showed a passion for business from an early age. In his 20s, he started his first business by renting a space on the Pacific Coast in San Diego to sell Honda motorcycles. His small shop eventually grew into one of the largest Honda dealerships in California. Ronald's success continued as he opened several more car dealerships, steadily increasing his earnings. People who worked for him often described him as determined and strong-willed, as well as a demanding employer. Ronald was previously married to a woman named Pamela, and they had a son named Carey. Their marriage lasted for several years, but eventually ended in divorce. After the divorce, he started living a luxurious lifestyle, spent all money on luxury items. He passionate about collecting airplanes and helicopters, and even purchased a large hangar to store his collection. Ronald lived in a large house in Rancho Santa Fe, California. He tried very hard to get permission from the county commission to build a helipad on his land, even though his neighbors were against it. This has allowed him to could easily travel to work by helicopter directly from his home. He also had helicopter pads on the roofs of his car dealerships, which made his helicopter travel even more convenient. In 1990, 50 years old, Ronald Vinci met 34 years old, Catherine Pileggi in a surprising setting, on a plane. Catherine was working as a flight attendant at the time. She grew up in a rural part of Georgia. As a young woman, she participated in beauty pageants, where she won people over with her charm and bright smile. Her beauty and friendly nature attracted many admirers. After completing her studies, Catherine worked for many years as a laboratory technician at a veterans hospital. However, she always wanted more from life and had aspirations beyond her job. In 1980, Catherine made a major career shift by leaving her job at the hospital to become a flight attendant with Delta Airlines, where she earned $20,000 a year. She enjoyed her new role, which involved attending to passengers and serving meals. Catherine has some helpful tips, like using coffee grounds to eliminate odors and a trick for cleaning stains off airplane seats. In 1990, 10 years after beginning her career as a flight attendant, Catherine had a fateful encounter on a flight. She met Ronald Vinci, a millionaire. He was immediately attracted to her charm and radiant smile. Despite the age difference of up to 14 years, this couple started dating. Catherine then left her job as a flight attendant and moved into Ronald's luxurious house in California. Together, they shared a passion for traveling, with Aspen, Colorado, being one of their favorite getaway destinations. Ronald and Catherine were together for 10 years, but he never proposed to her. Eventually, they broke up, and Catherine moved to Florida to find a new partner and a new beginning. In April 2001, at 45 years old, she started dating 63 years old Dilio Carano, a financially successful insurance agent. They met through friends. Catherine shared with Dilio her past unhappy relationship with Ronald, described it as a period of suffering and unhappiness. He insulted her, he also heavy drinking, and openly discussed his extramarital affairs with other women. She had endured this for 10 years, hoping Ronald would propose, but he never did. Unlike Ronald, Dilio quickly proposed to Catherine, and they got married in May 2001, just 1 month after meeting. Catherine was happy with the marriage new, and after their wedding, Dilio and Catherine moved in together in Miami Beach, Florida. Dilio describes that when she first got married, Catherine had a very gentle, calm personality, spoke little and ate very moderately. She also had a deep fear of water. She couldn't bathe in the ocean or river and would experience extreme anxiety when entering the water. A few months into their marriage, Dilio noticed a significant change in Catherine's behavior. She increasingly asked him for money more, asking for money to buy clothes and gifts, and often compared him to her friends' generous husbands. Dilio estimated that Catherine was taking about $55,000 from him each month. She claimed it was for educational expenses but never showed any receipts or proof. After enduring this financial burden for a few months, Dilio realized he had rushed into the marriage and wanted a divorce. With no children or shared property, the separation was relatively uncomplicated. Court documents indicated that Dilio had a net worth of $4.5 million, whereas Catherine had only $8,000 in her accounts. As Catherine was preparing to leave Dilio's house, she felt sad and hopeless, expressing that she didn't see the point of living, couldn't succeed in anything, and that her life had no meaning. 2005 saw millionaire Ronald make a big change in his life by moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. His friends persuaded him that Florida was appealing due to its good weather and low taxes. By then, Ronald had already sold his car dealerships and amassed a lot of wealth. In Fort Lauderdale, he purchased a luxurious fourth-floor apartment and started enjoying his new home. In the same year, Ronald rekindled his relationship with Catherine, a flight attendant he had dated before. Catherine then moved into Ronald's apartment. Interestingly, Catherine's former husband, Dilio, also lived in the same building, but 30 floors below. Dilio couldn't understand why Catherine had come back with the millionaire she had once called a monster. As Ronald and Catherine's relationship progressed, she dreamed of marrying him. Neither Ronald or Catherine need to go to work, led a life of leisure. Over time, Ronald and Catherine's differences became more evident. Ronald was obese and enjoyed indulging in rich foods, while Catherine ate sparingly and weighed only 42 kilograms. Ronald loved lively parties, whereas Catherine preferred staying at home, absorbed in crime stories. She rarely wore dresses, choosing shorts and sneakers for her daily wear. She and Ronald often traveled together, crossing the sea by boat and visiting the Caribbean islands by air. Catherine's diary shows that she was very afraid of the sea and describes how Ronald always encouraged her to overcome this phobia. Her decision to join him on these expeditions, despite her fears, proving that Ronald is very good at convincing her to do what he wants, and he can also be very firm when telling her to face her own worries. Despite his substantial wealth, but Ronald preferred socializing with friends at affordable bars along the Fort Lauderdale waterfront, where he would often order inexpensive tacos and potent drinks. He was known for being the center of attention, frequently flirting with women, but also jokingly acknowledging that his charm had worn off. The couple's home often hosted gatherings. On these occasions, Ronald would drink a lot of wine and speak more frankly. He would sometimes insult Catherine in front of their friends, claiming she owed everything to him. However, Catherine remained composed and quietly meeting Ronald's demands by serving drinks, snacks, and attending to his friends. For 5 years, the millionaire Ronald hesitated to propose to Catherine. By 2010, Ronald began telling friends he wanted to end their relationship and find a younger partner. In early 2011, Ronald was hospitalized with severe intestinal issues, likely due to long-term alcohol abuse. Doctors attributed his illness to his drinking habits, but Ronald noted a recent change in the taste of his food. A friend jokingly suggested, "Maybe Catherine tried to poison you." Ronald dismissed the joke without much thought. In reality, he had been neglecting his health, with excessive drinking and taking too many pills in an attempt to relax and sleep better, which was affecting his well-being. In June 2011, Ronald bought a new waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale, valued at $3 million, conveniently located near where his yacht was docked. At 70 years old, Ronald planned to enjoy his remaining years in this comfortable house. He anticipated visits from his only son, Carrie, and his grandson. Ronald often joked about Carrie's job as a waiter, humorously suggesting that Carrie was impatiently waiting for his passing. The gardener of Ronald called 911 on the afternoon of June 28, 2011, to report an incident involving his employer, Ronald. When the police arrived, they found the lifeless body of Ronald in a guest room. Shockingly, his body had been carefully wrapped in plastic bags, tightly sealed with tape, and placed in a sleeping bag. Inside this sleeping bag were also soiled sheets, and on them was a substance that looked like wet dirt, which was later identified as coffee grounds. Upon further investigation, a slashed mattress was discovered under the blanket on the bed. The gardener informed the police that, according to Catherine, Ronald had fallen down the stairs, suffered a head injury, and subsequently died. However, the officers suspected that his death was not accidental. During the interrogation, the gardener shockingly narrated the incident leading up to the discovery of Ronald's lifeless body. According to his testimony, Catherine had called him late at night, urgently asking him to go to Ronald's residence. Upon arriving in the morning, he encountered the eerie scene of Ronald's lifeless body, tightly wrapped in a sleeping bag in one of the guest rooms. Catherine, upset and crying, begged the gardener to help her bury Ronald. She explained that Ronald had always wanted to be buried at sea after he died. To fulfill this wish, she bought a blue container for Ronald's body, planning to take it out to sea on his yacht. Catherine had already brought the container home and put it in the garage before the gardener informed the authorities. After a detailed examination, the medical examiner uncovered gruesome details. Ronald Vinci, aged 70, was found with 9 stab wounds to his chest and neck, evidence of hammer blows to his head, and a fatal gunshot wound to the head. On the evening of June 27, Ronald's friends visited his home. Catherine prepared the meal, and he served drinks. During the meet, Ronald mentioned that his passport and one of his pistols were missing. At dinner, Ronald complained that the food tasted unusually bitter. Surprisingly, Ronald, who was known for staying up late, said he wasn't feeling well and went to bed as early as 7:30 p.m. His friends found his early bedtime unusual and eventually left his house. Catherine, 54, was questioned a few hours later and gave a detailed confession. She explained that around 1 a.m. on June 28, a drunken Ronald woke up and started verbally insulting her. The situation got worse, and then he chased her down the stairs, stumbled, and fell, hitting his head hard. Catherine said she helped him up and took him to a guest bedroom on the first floor. Then she cleaned the blood stains on the stairs. A few hours later, she checked on Ronald in the guest bedroom and found him asleep with a loaded gun on the nightstand. Fearing Ronald meant to kill her, Catherine, in a state of panic and desperation, grabbed the gun and fatally shot him in the head. During the interrogation, Catherine admitted that she had been really scared and angrier than she had ever been, feeling as if her soul had left her body. After the shooting, she continued to inflict numerous additional wounds on Ronald with a knife and a hammer. Then, she wrapped his body in a bag and attempted to hide the evidence. She called the gardener, realizing she couldn't get rid of the body by herself. Surveillance camera photos showed Catherine buying a large blue container at a hardware store after the murder, intending to use it to dispose of Ronald's body in the ocean. Furthermore, a gun matching the one used to shoot Ronald was found in Catherine's car, with her fingerprints on it. Her Bentley also contained a knife, cut-up pieces of a mattress, clothing, and rubber gloves, all stained with Ronald's blood. Catherine was charged with first-degree murder and was arrested and detained. It was revealed that a month before the murder, in May, Catherine was involved in a legal issue. Her sister had accused her of borrowing money and refusing to pay it back. Catherine claimed the money was a gift and refused to return it. On May 17, the court ruled in favor of Catherine in this dispute. Ronald's neighbors reported hearing screams from the Ronald house on the night of the crime. Additionally, a witness saw a white car with a large trailer near home in the early morning, which belonged to the gardener. Ronald's friends mentioned that he had wanted to end his relationship with Catherine for some time. The couple had not been intimate for months and even slept in separate rooms in their large house. Just weeks before the tragedy, Ronald tried to give Catherine $1 million through one of his employees, asking her to leave his house permanently. Prosecutors believed that Catherine's main motive was the fear of losing her wealthy partner. However, Catherine's defense claimed that she had been a victim of severe abuse during her relationship with Ronald and acted in self-defense. Questions were raised about why Catherine didn't report to the police right away, why she didn't tell the truth, and why she stayed with him for years despite the alleged abuse. In court, some of Catherine's relatives supported her, and a court psychiatrist noted signs of domestic violence. However, none of Ronald's close friends could verify any abuse in their relationship. They described Catherine as calm and mentioned she never complained about her life. During the trial, Catherine made a startling accusation, claiming Ronald was responsible for the sudden death of her younger sister Angela in December 2009, 3 years earlier. Catherine, Ronald, and Angela went on a Caribbean Sea cruise. Angela, who had been battling substance abuse, drank too much at a party and became very ill, suffering from intense convulsions. Catherine tried to save her sister by giving her artificial respiration, but sadly, Angela's heart stopped and she passed away. It was later revealed that Ronald had given Angela some pills on the cruise's first evening, supposedly to help her relax. Catherine strongly believed these pills contributed to her sister's death. In 2014, a jury found Catherine Pileggi guilty of murdering Ronald Vinci, and she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She is currently serving her sentence at the LEL Correctional Institution in Marin County, Florida, with a potential release date set for January 2034, when she will be 77 years old. Ronald, a successful and wealthy man, experienced a tragic end because of his ill-fated relationship with Catherine, a quiet and unassuming flight attendant. Despite his many wise decisions in life, but this relationship proved to be a fatal mistake for the millionaire. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Kathleen Volbeek. Australia's most notorious female serial killer was recently released after questions about her guilt emerged, but she still spent 2 decades in prison. Kathleen Volbeek was born in 1967 in Western Sydney. Her life was challenging from the start, as her mother chose to leave her violent husband, who had a criminal background. This man had a history that included a knife attack, though the victim survived. It remains unclear if Kathleen experienced domestic violence or abuse from her father, but her mother was murdered by him. After her mother left the abusive relationship, her husband tracked her down and stabbed her 24 times, resulting in her death. He received a 15-year prison sentence for this crime. At the time, young Kathleen was just 18 months old and had already lost both parents. Kathleen was raised by a family in Newcastle. She had an older sister, Leah. As a child, Kathleen discovered that her parents had actually adopted her, which left her deeply upset. At school, she had friends who understood her difficult situation and supported her as much as they could. However, her adoptive parents were strict and controlling, often punishing her, which created further problems for the 16-year-old. A staff member informed her that she was not legally adopted. She had only been taken out of state temporarily, meaning she was still in state care. Kathleen began to worry that her new parents were not going to finalize the adoption because they did not love her enough. She felt a lack of love and affection from them, especially when compared to the affection they had for their biological daughter. These feelings were further intensified by the hardships of her teenage years. Even her supportive friends had to deal with the negativity and depression she was experiencing during this time. As a result, Kathleen became curious about her biological parents to understand why they had abandoned her. She soon learned that her biological father had murdered her mother and was sentenced to a long prison term. This shocked her deeply. The situation was made worse by the fact that it was the 1980s, a time when people rarely sought help from psychologists or psychiatrists for personal issues. Instead of reaching out for support, the girl kept her feelings to herself and seldom talked about them, even with her closest friends. After finishing school, Kathleen chose to leave her foster home and move in with her friend Billy Joe, who lived with his mother. This change took place in 1985, marking the beginning of her adulthood. One night, she and Billy Joe went to a disco where she met Skryg Falbeck, a 24-year-old employee at a mining company. He was kind and caring, making Kathleen feel confident, calm, and protected. They enjoyed each other's company, loved to dance, and their relationship quickly grew deeper. That same year, they decided to move in together, and it seemed like their relationship was perfect. 2 years later, the couple married in a simple ceremony. A year later, Kathleen became pregnant. In 1989, they welcomed their first child, a healthy baby boy named Caleb. However, he had a small defect in his larynx that made it difficult for him to breathe when his mouth was closed, causing him to breathe heavily and loudly. Kathleen, who had grown up without parents, was determined to be a good mother. She cared for Caleb with love and care, especially given his condition, and she kept constant tabs on him. Sadly, her efforts were not enough. Just 19 days after his birth, Kathleen found Caleb dead in his crib. His death was a devastating blow to both parents. Doctors examined the child and determined he was a victim of sudden infant death syndrome. Affects infants under 1 year of age and can lead to sudden death without an identifiable cause. The investigation found no indications of foul play. Despite their heartbreak, the couple chose to try for another child. A year later, on June 3, 1990, they welcomed their son Patrick. For several months, he thrived and developed normally, with no signs of issues. However, on the night of October 18, Kathleen heard a cry from the children's bedroom. Her husband rushed to the room and discovered Patrick in his crib, appearing blue. Kathleen was by the crib, screaming and crying in fear. The man administered CPR while Kathleen called for an ambulance, which arrived quickly. Thankfully, Patrick was still alive and was taken to the hospital for urgent care. There, doctors diagnosed him with epilepsy. Fortunately, Patrick was saved and later discharged. For a while, everything was calm, but in February 1991, another seizure occurred while Skryg, the child's father, was at work. His wife, Kathleen, called him in tears. She said the child had had another seizure and could not be saved. The grieving couple then decided to move away from Newcastle to start a new life elsewhere. They moved to the small town of Metland, a population of less than 2,000 people, about a 40-minute drive from their old home. Despite their past tragedies, they remained hopeful and continued trying for children, dreaming of a large family. Eventually, they welcomed their next daughter, Sarah. Sadly, she suffered from the same respiratory problems as their first child, Caleb. Her parents devoted themselves to her care and treatment, but despite their best efforts, Sarah was found dead in her bed on August 29, 1992, just 10 months after her birth. This loss was another devastating blow to them. Kathleen was deeply saddened by the misfortunes that had befallen her children. Frequent arguments between her and her husband had become a daily occurrence. Although they had decided to live separately, they had not yet filed for divorce. Kathleen repeatedly blamed herself for the deaths of her children, believing that she had failed to pay attention, missing important signs that could have helped them. She was devastated. At the time, there was no technology that could analyze the situation and identify any underlying problems. Doctors were baffled, declaring the children's deaths to be simply a series of tragic accidents. After a short separation, they got back together. They reunited and decided to move to a new home in Singleton, a town of about 5,000 people, not far from where they had lived. Their relationship improved, the challenges brought them closer together, and they became a stronger couple. They supported each other and continued to dream of having children. In late 1996, Kathleen became pregnant with their fourth child, 3 years after losing their daughter Sarah. Laura was born on August 7, 1997, and a year later the family celebrated her first birthday. The girl had no idea how significant this event was for her parents, especially given the sad history of sudden infant death syndrome affecting their previous children. The first year was especially difficult for them. They believed they could finally move past this challenging time. The arrival of their daughter helped improve their relationship. Kathleen and Skryg were able to enjoy being parents. After enduring a tough decade of marriage, they thought things were finally on track. Sadly, just 6 months after their daughter's first birthday, Kathleen discovered Laura unresponsive. She called for an ambulance, but the doctors could not save the baby. The medical examiner who performed an autopsy on Laura was unable to determine the cause of death. While investigating the circumstances of Laura's death, it was discovered that Kathleen's other children had also died as infants and all had the same diagnosis, asphyxia, related to heart problems. However, medical experts were unable to piece together all the relevant information due to the lack of available data. The Kathleen family's life would never be the same after these events. In 1999, an anonymous person reported the circumstances surrounding the family to the police, stating that all of Kathleen's children had died mysteriously. The police received information and started investigating the family. They spoke with Skryg Falbik to gather details and express suspicions about the mother, who was always present when the children died suddenly and without explanation. After this conversation, the husband became suspicious of his wife upon learning about the investigation. He gave the police her personal belongings, including her diaries, which the police began to examine closely. These documents later became crucial to the case. Tensions within the family grew, and the husband started blaming his wife for the children's deaths. The following year, the couple split up. The police, after thoroughly reviewing all the case materials, suspected that the biological mother may have harmed her children. The Kathleen had lost a total of 4 babies. However, these suspicions alone were not enough for an arrest. They needed solid evidence, which they worked diligently to gather. A year after her separation from her husband, Kathleen was arrested on suspicion of murdering her 4 children. She denied the charges, claiming that they had all died from natural causes, but police believed she was being untruthful. She was eventually found guilty of 3 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The jury trial began in 2003. The prosecution argued that Kathleen strangled all 4 of her children, claiming it was the result of anger or stress related to postnatal depression. They said she had difficulty caring for her newborns, overwhelmed by sleepless nights and the constant crying of her children. In this distressed state, the prosecution claimed she made the decision to harm her children, which allegedly happened 4 times. However, no specific evidence of abuse was presented. The children were raised in a loving family environment where they were well cared for, always neatly dressed, and well fed. The bodies showed no signs of injury, such as abrasions or bruises, nor were there any indications of a struggle or acts of cruelty. The prosecution highlighted that Kathleen consistently discovered her deceased children, which increased suspicion. Kathleen was the last person to see the children alive, which raised suspicions. The prosecution found this coincidence hard to believe. In response, the defense argued that the Kathleen was a housewife who spent all her time at home. In fact, she was the only person consistently with the children while her husband was at work. Therefore, it was natural for her to be the one to find them. The children died from sudden infant death syndrome, and this happened 4 times in a row. During the court proceedings, the Kathleen remained composed and showed little emotion. She made brief statements, explaining that she did her best to care for the children and often struggled to sleep at night. However, whenever she managed to fall asleep or became distracted, a tragedy occurred. Kathleen maintained that she could never have harmed her children. Her calm demeanor throughout the trial was portrayed by the media as indifferent and without guilt for her actions. Kathleen's diary entries significantly influenced the verdict, but only selected excerpts were presented in court, in which she wrote, "I was so frustrated with myself, angry and sad after losing my temper, and I felt like the worst mother in the world. I was afraid she would abandon me like Sarah, referring to her feelings about her daughter Laura. While these statements expressed her self-blame, they did not explicitly admit guilt or describe the events leading up to her death. Despite this, her diary entries were interpreted only negatively, suggesting that she felt responsible for her children's deaths, although she did not admit to killing them. These records were not reviewed by psychologists or other experts who could have provided a more accurate interpretation. The prosecution strategically influenced the jury by reading brief excerpts while neglecting to mention that these were personal records of a woman mourning the loss of 4 children. The media's negative portrayal and the prosecutor's diary entries fostered doubts about the defendant. Additionally, the prosecutor referred to Meadows' Law, which consists of 3 rules established by a renowned British pediatrician, Roy Meadow. He stated that the death of a single baby is a tragedy, 2 deaths raise suspicion, and 3 are considered murder unless proven otherwise. In this case, there were 4 deaths. Caleb, the first child, died in 1989. This was followed by Patrick, who passed away in 1991 at just 8 months old due to epileptic seizures. Sarah died at night in 1993 when she was 10 months old. Laura, the last of the children, lived the longest, dying in 1999 at 18 months. Initially, the Kathleen was considered a villain in the trial, with experts from various medical fields involved. They stated that sudden infant death syndrome can theoretically occur in one family, but the chances of this happening are very low. At that time, no one accepted responsibility for the tragic deaths. Were these events a coincidence in the Kathleen family? The numerous allegations contributed to the eventual guilty verdict. The case gained significant public attention and led to multiple trials across the country, where other mothers were also accused of causing their children's deaths due to sudden infant death syndrome. These women denied the allegations but were unable to prove their innocence, resulting in their arrest and facing intense scrutiny from prosecutors. Prosecutors even looked into Kathleen's past, which included a troubled childhood and a father in prison for killing his mother, which showed a penchant for violence. And the incriminating evidence against Kathleen came from her ex-husband, Skryg Falbeck, who testified against her in court. She felt deeply betrayed by his testimony, as he believed at the time that she was responsible for the deaths of their children. In May 2003, after a 7-week trial, Catherine Volpig was convicted of 3 counts of murder and causing serious harm to her first son. When the verdict was read, she broke down in tears, overwhelmed with despair. Catherine believed she was innocent and did not expect to be found guilty. The media widely covered the case, portraying it as a triumph over one of Australia's most notorious female serial killers. Public sentiment towards Kathleen was extremely negative. She was widely hated. She received a 40-year prison sentence but could apply for parole after 30 years. Unsatisfied with her sentence, she appealed, leading to a review in 2005, which reduced her sentence to 30 years with early parole eligibility. After 25 years in prison, Kathleen faced hardship. She was treated with contempt and violence. Fortunately, Kathleen had friends who visited her regularly and believed she was innocent. Refusing to give up, she sought to overturn her conviction, filing an appeal and working with her attorneys from California, who brought in experts and new findings related to child mortality that could support her case. After 12 years in prison, in 2015, there was good reason to believe Kathleen was innocent. Several forensic experts reviewed the case documents and concluded that the children's deaths were due to natural causes. This new evidence prompted further investigations in 2018. Kathleen was ultimately left alone during the investigation. She spoke out to defend herself against the false accusations stemming from her diary entries. Kathleen explained that writing in her diary was her way of coping with life's challenges, and it provided her with relief. Doctors believed that the deaths of 4 babies in a couple suffering from phobias could be linked to a genetic mutation inherited from their parents. However, the scientific techniques available at that time were not reliable enough to confirm this, and mere words were insufficient. In 2020, an immunology professor from the Department of Genetic Medicine at the Australian National University joined the investigation. He initiated a global study into the situation faced by the defendant. Rare abnormalities related to genetic mutations were identified, leading to birth defects in Kathleen's children. Doctors confirmed that all 4 children in Kathleen's family had these rare mutations, which caused fatal seizures. The condition was determined to be a genetic abnormality, and there were no signs of violent death in these cases. In 2021, a group of prominent scientists from different areas of medicine, active in the 1990s, signed a petition in support of Kathleen, strongly asserting her innocence. They appealed to law enforcement, emphasizing Kathleen's innocence and referencing recent scientific discoveries and research that were unavailable at the time she was wrongly convicted. A new investigation was initiated by the end of 2022 and concluded in April 2023. Throughout this investigation, new evidence was gathered and submitted for review. During the same period, Kathleen's diaries were re-examined by experts in psychology and psychiatry. After reviewing the entries, they concluded that the diaries did not contain confessions. Instead, they reflected Kathleen's internal struggles, including her fears, anxiety, and grief related to post-traumatic stress. Forensic experts, who had investigated numerous infant murders, raised doubts about the possibility of strangling a child without leaving any evidence. As a result of these findings, the prosecutor's office was persuaded to reconsider the case's sentence and punishment. This new information sparked significant public outrage. Some people continued to believe in Kathleen's guilt and argued that she deserved to be in prison, while others were furious, questioning why an innocent woman had spent 20 years behind bars. On June 5, 2023, Kathleen Volbig was pardoned after serving 20 years of a prison sentence that was originally intended to last at least 25 years. This pardon allowed her to appeal to the Court of Appeal for criminal cases, which could provide her with financial compensation for the years she lost. However, she still faces the lasting effects of media coverage that has turned her case into a phenomenon known as Kathleen phobia, causing her to face hostility from strangers. Financial compensation cannot make up for the time she spent alone in prison, alongside dangerous criminals. Nor can it erase the humiliation and betrayal she experienced. Her life has truly been a nightmare. Kathleen is now 56 years old and continues to persevere despite everything. If her children had lived, her firstborn, Caleb, would be 34 years old, and her youngest daughter, Laura, would be 25. They might have had children of their own, allowing Kathleen to become a grandmother. Sadly, she has not had the chance to enjoy those joys in life. Currently, forensic medicine experts are debating the validity of the law of Meadows, arguing that it is fundamentally flawed. Many women have suffered as a result of this law and were acquitted later on. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Brittany Gregory. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988 in Brigg, New Jersey, a small town. She is the youngest of 5 children, and her parents are divorced. She and her siblings live with their father. Brittany has a strong relationship with everyone, especially her sister Brianna, who is 4 years older than her. They have a special bond, often helping each other, exchanging clothes, and playing together. Brittany did very well in school. She was recognized as the top student in her class, and her teachers saw great potential in her, believing that she could become a scientist in the future. Despite her achievements, Brittany remained humble, cheerful, and kind. She often helped others and had many friends. Brittany harbored a unique desire to become a forensic scientist, motivated by her fascination with analyzing evidence at crime scenes. By the summer of 2004, 16-year-old Brittany and her 20-year-old older sister, Brianna, lived with their father, Joe Dana, and his new partner, Lori Peterson, in a small house near their school. Their home was the last house on the street, adjacent to a wooded area. At that time, Brittany was dating an 18-year-old named John Fitzgerald. They had been in a relationship for nearly 2 years, and John was well-liked by Brittany's family. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brianna and her mother traveled to Toms River to visit Brittany's brother, who needed help caring for his daughter. While they were gone, Brittany called her mother on her cell phone. Voice was very sad, as if something was wrong. Her mother explained that they were too far from home to take Brittany to John's house right away, but that Brianna could come and help her in an hour. Brittany disagreed with this plan. Brianna was free about 45 minutes later and tried calling Brittany, but younger sister did not answer. Thinking that Brittany might be asleep or had found another way to get a ride, Brianna decided to go to bed. The next morning, Brianna came home to find that Brittany was missing. Although Brittany's belongings, including her phone, were still in her room, Brianna wondered if she had stayed overnight at John's place. However, it didn't make sense for her to leave without telling anyone, especially without her phone. Worried, Brianna began calling all of Brittany's friends to see if they had seen her, but no one had any information. Brianna then called John, who said that he last spoke to Brittany on Sunday morning and that she had not visited him since. Realizing that something was wrong, Brianna rushed to the police station to report Brittany missing. The police initially dismissed Brianna's concerns about younger sister, Brittany. They thought Brittany might have run away or was just hanging out with friends. Brianna told the police that she had already reached out to all of Brittany's friends and her boyfriend, but no one had seen her. She stressed that her sister wouldn't have run away because she was a dedicated student who preferred spending time in the library. After some convincing from Brianna, the police began to take the situation more seriously, and police started their investigation. Their first visit was to the father's house, where Brittany had last been seen, to look for clues. They found Brittany's purse, phone, and wallet still in her room, and everything seemed normal, no signs of struggle. Police also interviewed all family members living in the home and confirmed that each had an alibi. Posters featuring pictures of the Brittany were placed throughout the city as police began searching the area around her house and interviewing neighbors for information. They found that her house was at the end of the street, adjacent to a wooded area. Although none of the neighbors reported anything unusual that evening, one neighbor remembered seeing a girl resembling Brittany walking down the street late Friday night, 2 days before she went missing. Brianna told the police that Brittany and John had been having a difficult relationship, often arguing, and that they had another fight on the day she disappeared. Police brought John in for questioning, where he confidently claimed that the last time he spoke to Brittany was that morning before she went missing. John was at the beach with friends, and he was not enjoying himself. He mentioned that he had broken up with Brittany a few days earlier, but she was having trouble accepting it, even though she knew he was now dating someone else. John did not plan to see Brittany that evening and was unaware that she was coming to meet him. However, he shared an important detail: Brittany often took a path through the forest behind her father's house to visit him. When asked why he broke up with Brittany, John explained that she had kissed another guy at a party, which led him to end their relationship and start dating someone new. The last time he saw Brittany was on July 10th, the day before she disappeared. On that day, she gave him a letter in which she expressed a desire to reconcile. The police requested to see this letter, and John provided it to them. In the letter, Brittany apologized for her actions, acknowledged that she had hurt John, and asked if they could remain friends. John appeared genuinely worried and anxious about Brittany's disappearance. The police had no evidence against him and released him after he passed a background check and a polygraph test. Thereby, he was eliminated from the suspect list. Brittany's disappearance became increasingly puzzling. Contrary to her family's beliefs, she was not as shy as they thought. She attended parties, flirted with various guys, and would sometimes travel through the forest in the evenings to meet a guy who lived about 1.5 kilometers away. This raised concerns about what could have happened to her in the forest. Search efforts began there, focusing on a bike path that started near her house and led to the John's place. Despite searching for 3 days, no signs of her were found. The investigation hit a wall until a woman came forward. She had been in the park with her boyfriend that evening and remembered one vehicle avalanche pickup with distinctive wheels. That passed by. She noted the license plate, and police traced the vehicle to a 23-year-old man named Anthony Geiger. When they investigated Anthony, they discovered that he was the ex-boyfriend of Brittany's older sister Bobby. They had ended their relationship a month earlier because he was jealous and made suspiciously friendly gestures toward Brittany. Brittany's friends noticed that at parties, Anthony often looked at her in a strange way and attempted to flirt with her. The last time they all gathered was for dinner, where Anthony flirted with Brittany again. This behavior raised suspicions, who thought he might have tracked down and kidnapped her. They brought him in for questioning. Anthony denied being near the woods on the evening of July 11th, but he admitted that he had a friendship with Brittany and had seen her frequently at parties and other gatherings. However, he denied his friend's claims that he had flirted with her, saying that Brittany was too nice for him and that he only saw her as a friend. He insisted that he had an alibi, saying that he had spent that evening at home with a new girlfriend. The girlfriend was contacted by police and she confirmed Anthony's alibi. With no substantial evidence against him, the police released Anthony. Police reviewed Brittany's letter to John and discovered disturbing notes in her breakup text messages. They began to worry that she might harm herself because of her breakup with her boyfriend. Brittany's parents, upon hearing this theory, firmly rejected the idea that their intelligent, ambitious daughter would take her end one's own life. They believed that she loved life too much and had made important plans for her future that a breakup would not derail. The investigation hit another dead end, prompting police to reach out to the public through the media in the hope of finding potential witnesses. Police from surrounding areas joined the effort and began searching the house where Brittany went missing. Brittany's parents decided it was time to take action to find their daughter. They began by visiting nearby homes and asking locals for information, but their efforts yielded no results. During a thorough search, the police discovered something interesting in the house, a letter hidden in a magazine. In the letter, Brittany expressed her desire to enter a competition. She revealed that she came from a troubled family. Her mother was a drug addict who abandoned her when she was 9 years old. She now lived with her father and his partner, and their relationship was strained. In addition, her brother was in prison, and she visited him every weekend. She mentioned that she wasn't perfect, but she had a kind heart and wanted to be different from her parents. She was determined to create a better life for herself and dreamed of becoming a criminologist to help solve crimes. After the police read her letter, they identified new suspects, the Brittany family, who had not been considered before. The police started investigating all the members of the Brittany family, discovering that in the house where there was a massage parlor for men. The massage parlor is run by Lauren Peterson, Brittany's father's second wife. The house received daily visits from various men for private meetings, and the woman regularly saw clients. It appeared that the entire neighborhood was aware of this, and Lauren openly embraced her profession, handing out business cards widely. Neighbors reported witnessing illegal substances at her residence, raising suspicions that Lauren might also be involved in drug distribution. Police realized the teenager's disappearance was not coincidental, something serious had occurred, indicating she was in danger. It was possible that one of Lauren's clients could have abducted Brittany from the house. The police began checking Lauren's clients and discovered many unusual people among them. Soon, the news reported that the police had arrested a suspect in Brittany's murder. The mother of the Brittany recognized him as 38-year-old Jack Fuller, who had been a family friend for 20 years. He attended all their family vacations and kept in close contact with them. His daughter was engaged to Brittany's brother, who was in prison. Brittany's mother was shocked when she heard the news. They couldn't believe that Jack could be involved. He was friendly and his teenage children were friends with Brittany. Brittany had saved Jack's life a few months before she went missing. When she went to visit his daughter, she found Jack not breathing. Brittany called 911 and the responders were able to revive him after he overdosed. How could he hurt the person who saved him? The parents knew that Jack was involved in drug use and distribution. Jack had 48 previous convictions for drug possession and trafficking. His most recent sentence was 5.5 years in prison, and he had been on parole during the time Brittany went missing. They speculated that he may have stolen money to buy drugs, but questioned why he would target their daughter. They thought he may have taken her ring or necklace. Police then tracked him down. They received information about Jack from a caller who said that Jack had complained of back pain because he had buried the body of the girl he had killed in sandy soil. Jack reportedly told the caller at the burial site would not be discovered and asked for advice on how deep to bury the body to prevent animals from finding it. The police invited the informant to the station to meet with Jack and record a conversation about the murder. The informant agreed and met Jack, successfully recording him saying he buried the body deep in the wilderness, making it unlikely to be found. Jack confessed to killing Brittany because she recognized him but did not provide further details. He also mentioned that he needed to eliminate someone else who knew too much, referring to his childhood friend Tommy, who was waiting in a car. However, at the end of their conversation, Jack claimed he was joking before getting into the car and leaving with Tommy. The police arrived at Tommy's house and took him to the station for questioning. Although Tommy insisted he didn't know anything, they showed him a recording of Jack expressing his desire to kill his friend. This made Tommy realize he was in danger and that it was wiser to report Jack. He then revealed everything he knew. On the night Brittany went missing, Tommy and Jack were driving around the neighborhood while smoking marijuana. They were near Brittany's house, and Jack decided to visit her father. He approached the house and found the door unlocked. Upon entering, he realized that Brittany's father was not home. 5 minutes later, Jack returned to the car with Brittany. When Tommy asked what happened, Brittany looked down and did not answer. Jack told Tommy that Jack would drive him home. After dropping his friend off, Jack left with Brittany. The next day, Tommy met Jack but did not mention the events of the previous day. They stopped at a car wash, where Jack meticulously washed his car, inside and out, even though he had never done this before. The car wash attendant jokingly asked him why he washed his car so thoroughly, which angered Jack, causing him to tell them to mind their own business or they might regret it. The attendant quickly backed off. Tommy learns of Brittany's disappearance, confronts Jack, and asks, "What did you do with that girl?" Jack is angry and insists that he knows nothing, claiming that he just took her home and left. Tommy suspects that Jack took Brittany into the woods that night with the intention of causing harm, especially since Jack had planned to use Lori's services that night, but Lori was not home. The police identify Jack as the prime suspect. When they come to arrest him, he tries to burn his car. The police suspect that evidence may be found in the car and conduct a thorough search. Brittany's blood was found in Jack's car. Police later went to the car wash and found that Jack had used a vacuum cleaner to clean the inside of the car. Police collected the vacuum cleaner bag for testing and found a large amount of sand and blood. Testing confirmed that the blood was Brittany's. Despite this evidence, Jack did not admit to kidnapping or killing Brittany and refused to discuss the matter. Police interviewed Jack's friends and acquaintances, most of whom believed he was capable of murder. Many described him as someone who would do anything to get what he wanted. Jack never held a job but always had money. He was involved in drug trafficking and forced drug addicts to provide sexual services in exchange for drugs. After Brittany went missing, a patrol officer stopped Jack when he saw Jack's car parked in a remote area near the woods outside the city. The officer asked Jack why he was there, and he said he was looking for his lost dog. The search for Brittany's body focused on the location, involving police, helicopters, and volunteers, but they found nothing. Police believe Brittany asked Jack to drive her to her boyfriend's house, but unfortunately, he took advantage of the situation and attacked and killed Brittany. A woman later contacted the police, saying she had information about where Brittany's body could be found. The woman had been held captive by Jack for several months while she struggled with drug addiction and was forced to comply with his demands. During this time, she got to know him well and learned all his secrets, including his routines and the places he frequented. He often took her along to these locations. One day, he pointed out a spot and mentioned it would be a good place to bury a body since no one would discover it there. Initially, the police were skeptical of her claims and asked her for more details. She was able to specify the location and noted that the soil there was sandy. Police recalled, an informant had previously mentioned Jack's complaints about the challenges of burying a body in sandy soil. The woman's information was credible, prompting them to investigate the area she identified. The search area was large, and several days passed without any results. Then, specialists compared sand collected from a vacuum cleaner with the local soil and found an exact match, prompting them to continue the search. On July 27, 2004, the dogs led them to an area with much less vegetation, where they suspected a body might be buried. They used a long stick to probe the ground, and when they pulled it out, it carried the smell of decomposing flesh. The body in the pit was that of a young girl. She was wearing a necklace with the name Brittany on it. The medical examiner confirmed that the body belonged to Brittany Gregory. Could not determine the exact cause of death due to the condition of the body, which showed signs of strangulation and severe head trauma from a blunt object. While there were no clear signs of sexual assault, it could not be completely ruled out. Jack consulted with a lawyer and chose to negotiate a plea bargain with the prosecution to reduce his sentence. The family agreed to this arrangement to avoid a lengthy trial. Brittany's mother expressed that she did not want the death penalty for Jack, believing it would be too easy for him. Instead, she wished for him to serve a life sentence in prison, enduring the consequences of his actions. Jack mentioned that Brittany asked him for a ride to see her boyfriend, and he agreed. He took his friend Tommy along and left with Brittany. However, they stopped, and Jack began smoking weed in front of her, which angered Brittany. She yelled at him and hit his hands. In response, Jack became violent and punched Brittany in the face, only stopping when she stopped moving. Realizing she was dead, he buried her, but no one believed his account of what happened. The forensic report revealed that Brittany had been strangled and suffered a severe head injury. The prosecution argued that the crime was sexually motivated. Ultimately, Jack was convicted and received a 30-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Tracy Roberts. In 1998, the Tracy Roberts family relocated from Chicago to the small town of Early, Iowa. The couple, Tracy and Michael, were in their second marriages and each had a son from previous relationships. Tracy was American, while Michael was originally from Australia. They were seen as a respectable young family by the local community. Michael was a computer expert who ran an IT business from home, with many innovative ideas he aimed to pursue. Tracy is an active and sociable housewife who enjoys sports. The couple met online and got married just 18 days after meeting in person. They have since had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and appear to be a very happy family. Many people admired Michael's determination, including his neighbor Mona, a real estate broker with whom they had completed several successful transactions. Mona was eager to continue working with Michael. She said that her 20-year-old son, Dustin, was very private and had a hard time keeping a job. He had tried many different positions but had not been able to hold any for long. Michael suggested that help Dustin discover his strengths. Later, he began teaching Dustin the basics of business. He took him on trips and supported him in attending church. Michael was generally seen as kind, pleasant, and empathetic, while his wife was regarded as sweet and sociable. They raised 3 children together, with Tracy managing the household and children while Michael focused on work, often traveling for business. However, an unexpected situation happened to Tracy's family. On the evening of December 13, 2001, in the town of Early, Tracy was in the kitchen preparing dinner with her children. While the food was being heated, she was also bathing her 1-year-old daughter upstairs. Meanwhile, her 2 older boys, ages 3 and 11, were watching television in the older boy's bedroom. Suddenly, the boys were startled by a piercing scream from their mother. The eldest, Bert, rushed to see what was happening. He saw Tracy trying to enter the room, but someone grabbed her by the hair and pulled her back into the hallway. Holding her baby daughter, Tracy managed to hand her over to Bert before a struggle with the attacker ensued. Tracy slammed the door shut behind her, and the boys could hear the sounds of a struggle and their mother's muffled cries for help. Terrified and unsure of what to do, Bert listened as the noises escalated. Then, after a brief silence, a shot rang out. During the attack, Tracy managed to defend herself against the criminals. One was killed, and the other escaped. Bert called 911 around 7 p.m., reporting that strangers had broken into their home and attacked his mother. Police officers took the call seriously and rushed to the address. It was unclear what had happened to Tracy and her 3 children at that time. Paramedics then arrived to find the children sobbing and Tracy repeatedly shouting that an intruder was still upstairs and pointing towards the stairs. However, as per protocol, paramedics could not enter the house until police had confirmed that the house was secure. The police arrived and went up to the 2nd floor where they found a young man lying dead in a pool of blood. There was no one else in the room. Tracy was quickly placed in an ambulance by a doctor and taken to the nearest medical center. The scene revealed a shocking crime. The entire family was overwhelmed and confused by the situation. The police began an investigation to shed light on this complicated situation. The small town where the incident occurred was a quiet and peaceful community of about 500 residents, all of whom knew each other well. The police began their investigation by questioning Bert, the eldest son. Bert had witnessed an attack on his mother. The attacker had pulled her hair back. Stunned, the boy knew he had to act to protect himself and the other children, so he grabbed a baseball bat, ready to fight off anyone who entered his room. When the chaos died down, he could only hear his mother breathing heavily. Finally, he heard the voices of 2 men outside starting to bang on the door. In fear, the boy began to scream, trying to scare the intruders away. Outside, the men shouted about having guns, and then several shots were fired. Suddenly, his mother opened the door. Bert was relieved that it was finally over. He then called 911. After hearing about the incident, Mona rushed to the scene. She was looking for her 20-year-old son, Dustin, a family friend. His car was parked in a private driveway, but when she arrived, the entire area, including Dustin's car, was cordoned off. She was not allowed into Tracy's house. Mona asked the officers about her son's condition, but they told her that he was dead. Dustin was found lying in a pool of blood near a second-floor bedroom. Tracy had shot him during a struggle. The police did not share any further information with Mona. Tracy woke up in a hospital 20 kilometers from her home. She had injuries to her neck that suggested she had been strangled. Tracy told the police what had happened that night. While she was bathing her daughter on the second floor, she heard noises downstairs. Thinking that her husband had returned early from a business trip, she went down to check. But she discovered two men. When they started to go upstairs, Tracy quickly took her daughter to Bert's room and left the three children in the room. She then tried to enter the room and close the door, but one of the men grabbed her hair and dragged her into the hallway. Then one of the attackers used her jeans to strangle her. During the struggle, Tracy lost consciousness and the attackers lost focus. When she regained consciousness, she heard screaming outside the door. Realizing this was her chance to escape, she got up and ran to the gun safe next to the bed in the master bedroom. Although the attackers chased her, she managed to turn a few numbers and retrieve a gun. Tracy aimed at them and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened because the safety was still on. The attackers were caught off guard, allowing her to fire again after removing the safety. The loud bang stunned her, and she continued to fire at the attackers until the room filled with smoke. Tracy didn't see the criminals, but she heard someone running away from the house. One of the criminals fell, while the other managed to escape. She also heard her frightened children calling her name, so she rushed into the room and opened the door. In a moment of panic, her son swung a bat at her, trying to protect himself, and she narrowly avoided being hit. The most important thing was that the children were safe. As the smoke cleared in the main bedroom, Tracy saw Dustin, a 20-year-old, lying on the floor but still alive. He began to get up, and in her shock, she grabbed the gun and ordered him to stay down, desperate for everything to stop. She yelled at him not to move, but Dustin, who was the son of her friend Mona, didn't listen. He stood up and approached her. Worried for her and the children's safety, she fired several shots, and Dustin fell to his death. Tracy recounted that earlier that day, Dustin visited their home. When he discovered that her husband was away on a business trip, he lingered on the porch for a long time, seemingly unwilling to leave. His behavior was unusual, and Tracy ultimately had to shut the door in his face. Tracy described a second participant in the crime as tall, with dark hair, around 30 years old, but she never saw his face. That evening, Tracy's husband, Michael, was on a business trip in Minneapolis. It was unclear why Dustin, whom Michael was helping, would attack Tracy and their children. The second killer was still at large, raising fears that he might return for revenge. This left Tracy feeling fearful, she unable to sleep because she was worried about her family's safety. The police had a hard time identifying the second suspect, based only on the vague description provided by Tracy. They began investigating Dustin's social connections to determine who might have accompanied him to Tracy's family home. Many people consider Tracy a hero. She gave many interviews to journalists. In front of the cameras, she and her husband, Michael, held hands, and she calmly said that she did what she had to do to protect her family, and the whole hall applauded. Many people thought that her actions were justified. Tracy was brave, she could protect not only herself but also her children. The police were wary of accepting anyone's testimony without evidence, so they began a thorough investigation of the events surrounding the case, finding the story unconvincing. Mona was going through the most difficult time of her life and was heartbroken. To her, the circumstances of her son's murder, as Tracy described them, were meaningless. She was haunted by nightmares of the attack that took her son's life. Mona, the mother of the young man who was shot, spoke to the media about her shock over the incident. She described Dustin as a kind person who had never shown aggression and had no criminal history. There was no reason for him to attack the Tracy family. However, Dustin had to see a psychologist with his mother. He had difficulty making friends at school, was often bullied, and was excluded from parties and celebrations. Despite seeing many doctors, they gave him different diagnoses without clear answers. Could his social difficulties lead to a moment of loss of control? Tracy told the police that she had always feared Dustin. She felt extremely unsafe, even around her husband, and she tried to avoid any encounters with Dustin. Under no circumstances would she let him be alone with the children because she believed he would harm them. Mona was shocked by these allegations. She had no idea that Tracy was facing such serious issues with her son. To Mona, everything seemed just the opposite. The police examined the crime scene and concluded that there was no clear motive for the violent attack. They suggested that it could only make sense if it had been planned as a robbery. The Tracy house contained many valuables, leading Tracy to believe that the young criminals aimed to steal cash or one of Michael's collectible weapons. However, the criminals' behavior did not resemble that of typical robbers. They ignored money and jewelry that were easily visible, and instead of trying to steal from Tracy while she was unconscious after being strangled, they focused solely on inflicting violence without any intent to sexually assault her. The police quickly identified a possible motive linked to Tracy and her husband. Not long before the home invasion, Tracy had experienced a traumatic incident. She was sexually assaulted by a dentist while under anesthesia. She regained consciousness during the assault, and the dentist attempted to silence her by promising to help her with her sexual problems and offering her $150,000 in compensation if she remained quiet. Tracy confided in her husband about this, and he urged her to report it to the police. Just 2 days after the dentist's attack on her, she was preparing to testify in court against her dentist, whom she was accusing of rape. He was likely the second person to invade her home, intending to silence her so she could not testify against him. However, police determined that the dentist had no connection to Dustin and had a solid alibi. He was at work at the time. Later, the Tracy recalled another individual who might have wanted her dead. His name was John Pittman, Tracy's first husband. They met while studying medicine at Northwestern University in Chicago. John was a fourth-year student interning at Chicago Clinical Hospital, and 19-year-old Tracy was in her first year of radiology. John was very controlling and aggressive, but Tracy was accustomed to such behavior after growing up with a domineering father, so she considered it normal. She married him, and they eventually moved to Denver, Colorado, where she gave birth to a son. As John tried to control every aspect of her life, she thought it was normal. However, over time, their marriage began to deteriorate. Tracy describes how he often abused her, especially during sex. Eventually, she grew tired of the physical violence, and they divorced. After the divorce, a custody battle began to take place. Bert revealed to his mother that his father had harassed him, leading to a contentious custody battle in court. Although there was no concrete evidence of harassment, Tracy was able to convince those present at the trial. Bert then lived with his mother. However, the long-running custody battle, which was still ongoing when the attack occurred, left John Pittman as a suspect. Even young Bert believed his father may have been involved in the attack. The police contacted John's colleagues in Virginia, where he lived, to confirm whether he had an alibi during the time of the crime. They found that he had a solid alibi. He was working at a clinic when the crime occurred. John denied any involvement and there was no evidence against him. At that time, he was a successful plastic surgeon with an excellent reputation. His acquaintances found it hard to believe that John could harm his son or kill his ex-wife, whom he had not been involved with for a long time. However, John had not been cleared yet and remained a suspect. Months passed without any progress in the case, and Tracy grew increasingly anxious. She felt unsafe knowing that the second attacker was still at large, fearing that he might return to take revenge on her. Meanwhile, the police began investigating the new suspect, Tracy's second husband, Michael. Further investigation revealed that their marriage had long since deteriorated, and the emotional connection between them had faded. Some speculated that Michael may have wanted to get rid of Tracy, a theory that received considerable support from those around them. Bert, Tracy's eldest son, revealed a disturbing truth about his stepfather. The man was very strict and often punished Bert severely for even minor infractions. Meanwhile, Tracy did not address her husband's aggressive behavior or protect her children. It is possible that Tracy had become accustomed to this type of treatment from a young age and did not realize it was a problem. Michael's behavior was noted by the police during a hospital visit where he visited his surviving relatives. His reaction seemed to be genuine shock at finding them still alive, suggesting that this outcome was not what he had wanted. Michael had a strong alibi. He was in another city on business. This was confirmed by CCTV footage. He was later given a lie detector test, but failed it and appeared to be hiding something. The police suspected he may have been involved in planning the attack. He did not inform his wife about the failed lie detector test. Tracy eventually discovered the truth about the lie detector test. Tracy became increasingly paranoid, believing that both her husband and his friend were conspiring against her to gain sole custody of their child. She shared her suspicions with the police chief, citing a dream in which Michael mentioned the plot. Tracy believed that her husband was indeed involved in the case. The police began investigating Michael and discovered that his IT business was struggling and he was in large debt. However, the couple held multi-million-dollar life insurance policies, which may have motivated Michael to eliminate Tracy to solve his financial problems. Additionally, he had a close relationship with Dustin, which may have led him to convince the young man to help him. Despite these theories, there was no concrete evidence linking Michael to any wrongdoing. Tracy and Michael's relationship became increasingly strained. In 2004, 3 years after the attack, they divorced. At the time, police had not found enough evidence to arrest Michael. After the divorce, Tracy and her children moved away. She changed her home, her job, and even her name to escape and protect herself from potential threats. Meanwhile, her friend Mona also moved to another city with her daughters. The tragedy not only affected Dustin's life, but also led to the death of his father a year later. On Thanksgiving Day 2002, Dustin's father chose to end his life at Dustin's grave. The father was devastated by his son's death, especially because of the judgmental looks from others who viewed Dustin as a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Mona, devastated by a series of losses, could not stop questioning what really happened the day her son arrived at Tracy's house. Mona refused to believe that he intended to hurt the people he admired. Michael's family was important to Dustin. He struggled with social interactions and felt safe and grateful to be with Michael, who understood him. The Mona intended to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Tracy Roberts to hold her accountable for Dustin's death and to uncover what happened that night. Mona lawyers launched their own investigation and discovered inconsistencies in Tracy's repeated accounts of the event. In one version, she claimed to have recognized Dustin immediately, while in another, she said she only learned his identity later. Additionally, she described shooting from different positions in her various retellings. Due to these discrepancies and the confusion surrounding the details, the lawyers concluded that her story was fabricated. On the day of the murder, Mona was busy shopping for Christmas. She called home to check if Dustin was up yet, as he had an important meeting scheduled. Her daughter answered and said that Dustin had left. She was relieved that Dustin was awake and going about his business. Later, Mona's nephew called to inform her that something had happened at Tracy's house. Mona rushed over, suspecting that Tracy and Michael had hurt each other, but she could not fathom that her son had been murdered. Mona mentioned that the day before the murder, Tracy had invited her son to her house to ask for help with something. Mona believed that this was Tracy's way of luring Dustin into a trap. She believed that Tracy was hiding something. However, no one paid attention to Mona's testimony until 7 years after the Roberts burglary. The same investigative team revisited the case and began to suspect that Tracy might not be the hero protecting her son, but a potential killer. There was no sign of forced entry or attempted robbery in the house. How could two people have broken in without leaving any evidence? Dustin had 9 gunshot wounds, indicating he had been shot at close range with no chance of survival, and there was no evidence of a second attack. The police decided to speak with Tracy's first husband, John. He described her as a monster, revealing that she had had bouts of aggression, including one time when she pointed a gun at him while threatening violence. She eventually fired a shot into the ceiling, prompting him to call the police. John discovered that Tracy was both aggressive and unfaithful. She drained their bank accounts. He even hired a private detective because he suspected she was cheating, and the detective confirmed that several of Tracy's lovers left their home while John was at work. Eventually, John filed for divorce because he began to fear Tracy. Concerned about their son growing up in such a toxic environment with an unstable mother, he fought for custody. This enraged Tracy, who tried to turn their son against John. A dentist was accused of raping Tracy during a dental appointment, but he claimed that she had been harassing him for a long time and was willing to prove it. His practice was equipped with cameras and the recordings supported his claim. It was revealed that Tracy, upon learning of this, had withdrawn her complaint against the dentist the day before the incident. Tracy's second husband, Michael, who she accused of being abusive and harassing her, denied all her allegations to police. He said Tracy was unfaithful. Michael claimed that he put up with these problems for the sake of his children but eventually decided to divorce her. He described himself as a strict father who never abused his wife and children and claimed that Tracy turned the children against him after their divorce. After the divorce, Michael moved to California to focus on his business. The Tracy seemed to slander everyone around her, presenting herself as a victim of abuse from the men in her life. However, the reality was quite the opposite. Police believed that her account of the events from December 13, 2001, was just another lie fabricated by Tracy. The police wanted to meet with Bert to gather more information, but Tracy not only moved to another state and changed her personal information, she also frequently changed her contact information. The police had to thoroughly review the entire list of evidence again. One significant item was an old computer discovered in the back seat of Dustin's car. Tracy believed this computer was crucial evidence in the robbery because it belonged to her husband. However, it was puzzling why Dustin would steal it when there were more valuable and easier to take items available in the house. Additionally, a pink notebook was found in which Dustin had written plans for the murder shortly before his death. The notes indicated that his mission included killing Tracy Roberts, and surprisingly, the person who ordered the assassination was Tracy's first husband, John. However, there was a strange detail in these notes. They contained so many specific details about events that Dustin could not have known before the attack, yet they were written in his own handwriting. It seemed that Dustin had written them under duress, possibly under threat. Dustin's mother did not recognize the pink notebook, which seemed more suited for a woman. Dustin disliked this color and would never have purchased such a notebook. He never kept diaries, and the only content in this notebook was a crime plan, which appeared unusual. It looked brand new and seemed to have been used only once for those notes. It suggested that Tracy might have given the notebook to someone to stage a crime. The latest investigation revealed that Dustin was not the attacker but Tracy's victim. It was also revealed that Tracy had been facing problems in her new town in Nebraska, where she had recently moved. She was charged with falsifying documents and false identity. 10 years after the murder, the police discovered the truth. On July 27, 2011, the police arrested Tracy. The memories of a friend who had helped Tracy clean out her house provided vital information. The friend knew about a notebook containing Dustin's confession. The police discovered that all of these statements had been recorded at Tracy's request. Police found no signs of an attack in the house. The wounds to her neck were self-inflicted, as evidenced by minor scratches that were not life-threatening. The claim that Dustin had struggled to stand up after being shot multiple times was clearly implausible. Forensic experts analyzed crime scene photographs and determined, based on blood spatter, that Dustin was still lying on the floor, with all the shots coming from above. This contradicted Tracy's version of events. The defense argued that Tracy was simply trying to protect her child. They said much of the evidence against her was circumstantial. The defense relied heavily on the testimony of Tracy's eldest son, Bert. He claimed that he heard men screaming and saw someone dragging his mother out the door. Bert also confirmed that the attacker told his mother that she was dead and warned that he would be next. He then saw a young man with a gunshot wound trying to get up, as his mother had described. However, the reliability of Bert's testimony has been questioned. Tracy initially mentioned that the nursery door was closed at the time, preventing Bert from witnessing the incident. The prosecution argued that Bert's account may have been influenced by his mother. The prosecution argued that Tracy killed Dustin to frame her husband, hoping to gain sole custody of their children and access to his money. This was considered the primary motive for the crime. That same day, Tracy confronted Dustin at gunpoint, forced him to write in a notebook, and then shot him. She then staged a scene to make it look like she had been attacked, inflicting minor injuries on herself and leaving a notebook and a computer in Dustin's car. A forensic expert later confirmed that her injuries were inconsistent with her being unconscious, further casting doubt on her testimony. After reviewing the evidence, the jury found Tracy Roberts guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Tracy cried in court when she heard the verdict, but many people did not believe her tears, as they did not seem genuine. Again, she seemed to be acting. The situation was especially difficult for Bert, who was convinced that his mother had saved the lives of all her children that night and had been wrongly imprisoned. He continued to visit and support her. Years later, Tracy's second husband, Michael, with the approval of the guardianship agency, took the children back to Australia with his new wife. Tracy maintains her innocence and is currently serving her sentence at a women's correctional facility in Iowa. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Joel Shanbrum. Joel Shanbrum grew up in the town of Northridge, California. He met his future wife, Jennifer, while working as a DJ at a club. They quickly formed a close relationship and began dating. Many people are jealous because their relationship looks so perfect and their happiness radiates to everyone around them. Both sets of parents supported their relationship enthusiastically. Their delightful relationship eventually led to marriage. Jennifer and Joel married in 1991, and she moved to Los Angeles. Joel aspired to be a police officer, so he joined the police academy and, by 1993, was employed by the Los Angeles law enforcement agencies. Joel was dedicated to his job, especially overseeing troubled teenagers, and took pride in helping others. They later had a son named Jacob, and the family seemed to be living the perfect life. Although on the outside the family looked happy, but inside they hide dark secrets, which eventually lead to tragedy. On March 18, 1998, Jennifer's mother, Diane Bates, who lived with them, called 911. She returned home in the evening and found Joel lying motionless on the living room couch. He showed no signs of life and was bleeding. When the police arrived, she met them outside, she too afraid to go back inside. She suggested to the officers that Joel might have taken his own life. The police reassured her and entered the house. Upon examining the body in the scene, it became clear that it was a murder. Joel had been shot 3 times in the head, and there was no gun nearby. The medics confirmed Joel's death, and his body was sent for a forensic examination. The police quickly identified the murdered man as their colleague, 32 years old Joel Shanbrum. Joel is known to be a meek, calm person who dislikes conflict, so he seems to have no enemies. As they examined the rest of the house, they discovered that the entire upper floor had been ransacked, with drawers pulled out and clothes scattered everywhere. This suggested a robbery, leading investigators to suspect that Joel was killed during a botched burglary. While inspecting the house, the police heard a noise coming from the second-floor bathroom. They attempted to open the door, but it was locked from the inside. The officers asked for the door to be opened. From behind the door, they heard a frightened woman's voice, saying she didn't believe they were really the police. An officer then slid his badge under the door, and it was unlocked. Inside, they found 28-year-old Jennifer, the wife of Joel, and Jacob, their 3-year-old son. Both were visibly shaking with fear. The detectives took Jennifer aside for questioning. According to Jennifer, at around 7 p.m., she went to the bathroom to bathe Jacob. Then, she heard some noise downstairs, but she thought her husband was doing something. Then, as they stepped outside, they heard gunshots. Scared, she and Jacob ran back into the bathroom, closed the door, and hid to avoid being noticed. She also heard intruders moving through the house, throwing things around and talking about their loot. She realized they were thieves who had broken into the house, and her husband had accidentally encountered them, so they decided to eliminate him. She and Jacob remained hidden in the bathroom for over 2 hours until the police arrived. She was grateful that the robbers did not find them and that they were unharmed. When she asked the police about her husband, they informed her he had died. Jennifer, Jacob, and Diana were taken to the police station to provide detailed testimonies. Jennifer repeated her account, which sounded plausible and convincing. Jacob was too young to be questioned. Investigators believed the story that Joel was killed by robbers. Diana explained that when she saw Joel bleeding on the couch, she panicked and ran out of the house, driven by shock and fear. In her fright, she did not think to check on Jennifer and Jacob but just wait for the police outside. After their statements, the police allowed Jennifer, Diane, and Jacob to return home while they began investigating the robbery. At that time in the area, there had been several robberies, which supported Jennifer's story about the robbers. However, there were some inconsistencies. Previously, the robbers hadn't killed anyone. They followed a clear pattern, breaking into only empty houses late at night, which allowed them to remain unnoticed and difficult to get caught. It was odd that the robbers suddenly changed their tactics and broke into a house where many people lived, especially when everyone was home and the lights were on. Why would they attempt such a bold robbery? The Shanbrum family was considered middle class and not wealthy enough to attract the attention of thieves. Furthermore, after inspection, it was found that jewelry, money, electronics, and other valuables were not missing, even those in plain sight. There were no signs of forced entry or any evidence of strangers. No outsiders' fingerprints or DNA were found in the house. The neighbors also didn't notice anything unusual. They heard gunshots and looked out the windows but didn't see anyone leaving the house. Everything looked so strange. The next day, Jennifer was called to the police station for questioning again. She appeared very upset and repeated the same story, but this time added that she heard her husband, Joel, trying to fight back. He told the intruders that he was a police officer and they made a big mistake breaking into his house. Jennifer also mentioned that after she and Jacob ran into the bathroom, she heard 2 more shots. The detectives also interviewed Diane. They asked her to recount in detail what she had done on the day of the murder. She said she was off work that day. She left home at noon to go to the cinema, then went shopping, and had dinner at a cafe. Meanwhile, Joel, Jennifer, and Jacob were at home all evening. Then, she returned home and found Joel murdered on the couch. She noted an unusual detail: the living room blinds were closed, which was not typical for their family, because they often opened the curtains even at night. She believed the robbers had closed the blinds. The detectives found nothing suspicious in Diane's account and sent her home, they continuing their investigation. However, the police sensed something was amiss. On March 20th, the autopsy report for Joel was released. It revealed that all 3 shots were fired at close range. The first shot resulted in a superficial wound to the back of the head, the second hit him in the cheek, and the third struck him in the eye, penetrating the skull, caused death. A brain examination showed that Joel was shot with 2 types of weapons, 2 shots from a pistol and 1 from a .410 caliber weapon, which is rare. This could be a crucial clue in the investigation. Joel's time of death was determined to be between 8 and 9 o'clock in the evening, contradicting Jennifer's claim that he was shot at 7 p.m. Additionally, the medical examiner discovered that Joel was shot while asleep. During the crime scene examination, forensic experts concluded that there was little blood spatter around the body. If Joel had resisted and been shot while moving, there would have been more blood spatter. This finding contradicted Jennifer's testimony, where she claimed that she heard Joel say he was a police officer while arguing with the assailants. This was clearly a lie, causing detectives to investigate more thoroughly the Shambram family's relationship. Investigators spoke to people close to the family and discovers that Joel and Jennifer's relationship is not as perfect as it appears. There has been a serious conflict between them for a long time. They frequently quarreled, mainly over financial issues, and some believe that they were heading towards divorce. Joel's sister mentioned that Joel, besides working as a police officer, held 2 additional jobs to support his family. He wants his wife and children to have a prosperous life. The family rented the house they are living in after their previous home was foreclosed on by the bank. Jennifer, Joel's wife, did not work outside the home. She was a housewife, taking care of their child and managing household chores. Even though Joel tried hard, but they still had financial difficulties, and Jennifer's desires for a nicer house and a more expensive car added pressure. Joel loves Jennifer very much and was willing to do anything for her. He worked 3 jobs at once to meet her needs, but he couldn't manage a 4th job. The financial strain led to arguments. Joel, in hopes of saving their marriage, suggested they try marriage counseling, but Jennifer refused. When Joel got a managerial position at an insurance company, Jennifer wanted to work there too. It was at this company that they met Matthew Fletcher, and they quickly became best friends. Over time, Joel began to suspect that Jennifer and Matthew were having an affair. Eventually, Jennifer left her job, she feeling exhausted, and returned to being a housewife, but she continued to stay in touch with Matthew. Joel suspected his wife of having an affair, which led him to consider divorce. Because of his son, he doesn't want to divorce, but by 1997, he was exhausted by their strained relationship. He confided in his sister about his decision to divorce his wife and was determined to pursue custody of his son. However, this was his last conversation with his sister. On March 23, 1998, Joel was buried. At the funeral, Jennifer and Matthew attended together and they appeared unemotional, which upset his relatives. Later, detectives discovered that she and Matthew had gone to a hotel after the funeral, taking champagne and celebrating there overnight. Detectives at the funeral, who noted she and Matthew's odd behavior, decided to follow them. The plainclothes police had been monitoring Jennifer for a long time and noticed her daily contact with Matthew. Sometimes they spent the night together, shows that they have a romantic relationship with each other. Meanwhile, Joel's relatives suspected Jennifer of being involved in her husband's murder. A week after Joel's death, Matthew was summoned for questioning at the police station. Jennifer and Matthew arrived together but denied having an affair, despite their pager messages indicating otherwise, as they exchanged numerous love messages. They were interrogated separately. Matthew was asked about his whereabouts at the time of the murder. He claimed that at 7 p.m., he visited a client's home in the San Fernando Valley to handle an insurance policy and then went to see his sister at the hospital where she worked. The police began verifying his alibi. Some parts were confirmed, but they couldn't determine where Matthew was between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. Despite suspicions, there was no concrete evidence against Jennifer and Matthew, so they were released. Detectives continued to gather information about them. On April 27, researchers discovered that Joel had 3 life insurance policies totaling more than $1 million. The first was for $300,000 and he had obtained it while working as a police officer. The second was for $500,000, contract was paused and then reinstated shortly before the tragedy. There was also a $314,000 policy that Joel didn't even know about. He had been insured for one of his other jobs. After her death, Jennifer immediately went to the insurance companies to request the payments. The situation became more grim, as money, especially large amounts of money, is often a motive for crime. Under the second insurance policy worth $500,000, several issues emerged. Joel initially issued this policy himself but later decided he didn't need it and canceled it. 2 months before the tragedy, the policy was reopened with a signature at an office in Atlanta, Georgia. However, his sister was convinced that he didn't do this. She believed he had intentionally suspended the policy and questioned why he would reactivate it, especially given his busy schedule with 3 jobs, leaving him little time for lunch, let alone trips to another city. The detective discovered that Joel was not in Atlanta at that time, and the signature on the documents was fake. The investigation revealed that his wife Jennifer and her lover Matthew orchestrated this scheme. They traveled to Atlanta, went to the insurance company's head office, and forged Joel's signature on the policy. This suggested that their actions were premeditated. Although the evidence was circumstantial, but investigators continued to gather more information against they. Investigators interviewed witnesses, friends, relatives, co-workers of the Shanbrum family, and thoroughly examined the case materials to find evidence to incriminate Jennifer and Matthew. 6 months after Joel's death, Jennifer received $614,000 from 2 of his life insurance policies. Although the largest policy, worth $500,000, was initially denied due to a forged signature, but it didn't seem to make Jennifer and Matthew angry. Jennifer deposited the money into Matthew's account. They began dating officially in June 1998 and soon made their relationship public. She and Matthew took a romantic trip to Mexico, got engaged, and married on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1999, in Hawaii, just 4 days before the anniversary of Joel's death. Jennifer and Matthew lived extravagantly, spent insurance money on buying a car. Joel's family was completely taken surprised by Jennifer's sudden change. They were confused and didn't understand why she was acting like that. There was something wrong with her behavior. She continues to enjoy life to the fullest, remarried, and prepared for motherhood. Most importantly, They couldn't believe that she had gotten away with Joel's murder, from which she had profited. Despite the passage of time, but the police still lacked sufficient evidence to charge Jennifer and Matthew. After Jennifer and Matthew's child was born, they began living a very private life. They rarely appeared in public and interacted with only a few people. In 2002, detectives revisited the case. They believed Diane was dishonest in her testimony. Over the years, her testimony was inconsistent, with her story changing multiple times. There was also a gap in time between when she found Joel and when she called 911. This left investigators uncertain about what happened in the house during that time and what she was doing. Her behavior appeared suspicious to the investigators. The detectives called Diane in for questioning again. She continued to deny any involvement in the crime. Investigators offered her immunity from prosecution. They promised that if she testified truthfully before a grand jury, she would not be charged with any crime related to Joel's death. Despite this offer, she still disagrees. Diane eventually succumbed to police pressure and confessed that her daughter Jennifer had been in a romantic relationship with Matthew. They planned to kill Joel, and Diane was sent out for a walk that day to prevent her from interfering. She felt she had no choice but to comply. Diane also revealed that Jennifer had always dreamed of wealth, but Joel couldn't give her that. When Jennifer met Matthew, he enticed her with promises of riches, and she became influenced by his ideas. Diane found him to be a manipulator who controlled Jennifer and held him responsible for everything. Jennifer was highly skilled with firearms, she frequently practiced shooting, and owned a pistol. Matthew also had a shotgun. After Joel's murder, both the pistols and the shotgun vanished and was never found. Detectives believe Jennifer fired 2 shots at Joel with her pistol, while Matthew fired the final shot with the shotgun. Based on Diana's confession and the circumstantial evidence, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jennifer. Matthew was also arrested, and both were charged with the first-degree murder of Joel. At the time, Jennifer was pregnant with Matthew's second child, and then she gave birth in prison while awaiting trial. Her sister took custody of her 3 children. The trial began in March 2004. Matthew, confident due to his legal education, chose to represent himself, while Jennifer had a lawyer. They were tried together. Throughout the trial, Matthew and Jennifer appeared unconcerned. They were often seen talking and laughing with each other, as if they were not paying attention to the seriousness of the proceedings. They confident that the lack of physical evidence would lead to their acquittal, and they will not be held responsible for Joel's death. It was also revealed during the trial that Matthew hadn't divorced his previous wife, adding another charge against him. The prosecution is facing difficulties due to the lack of physical evidence such as DNA, fingerprints, weapons, and there were no other witnesses but Diane. They argued that Matthew and Jennifer had killed Joel in cold blood, with money as their primary motive. According to the prosecution, on the night of the murder, while Joel slept on the couch in the living room, she and Matthew executed their plan. She supposedly fired the first 2 shots with a pistol, and Matthew delivered a final shot with a shotgun. This occurred while Jacob was upstairs taking a bath. Afterward, they staged a robbery on the 2nd floor, took the weapon, left the house, and disposed of it. Jennifer then locked herself and Jacob in the bathroom until the police arrived. Matthew and Jennifer denied their guilt during the trial, claiming they had an alibi. Jennifer said she was hiding in the bathroom with Jacob, while Matthew was at a business meeting and then visited his sister. However, their alibi was not strong and was considered controversial. Then, the prosecutor highlighting key points: the house door was closed with no signs of forced entry, and since Joel was asleep, the door had to have been opened by someone already inside. This implicated Jennifer and Matthew. Diane, as part of a deal for immunity, testified against Matthew. While reviewing crime scene photos, the prosecutor noticed a bottle of water in the shower stall with the light on. He pointed this out to the jury, suggesting Jennifer had prepared to wait in the bathroom, indicating premeditation. The jury deliberated for 6 days before concluding that Jennifer and Matthew were guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. Both received life sentences without parole. During sentencing, Matthew and Jennifer supported each other by holding hands and never divorced. Matthew is incarcerated at the California State Penitentiary in Los Angeles, and Jennifer is at the Central California Women's Institution. Despite their imprisonment, they continue to communicate and exchange love letters. All of their appeals were rejected. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Matthew Turner Fisher. After the tragic death of his wife, Ernest Fisher was left to care for 4 children, all of whom were now adults. However, some members of the family were traumatized by the loss of their mother. Initially, this was considered a normal response to grief, as everyone processes loss differently. Some people may be overwhelmed by grief, leading to disturbing behaviors. Ernest was a retired man living a quiet life in the southern suburbs of Parallel, near Perth, Australia. The family lived modestly, with Ernest raising his 4 children on his own. His eldest son, Joshua, was 26 in 2016 and dedicated his free time to studying for a programming diploma. The second son, Matthew, was 23 and worked as a freight carrier. His third daughter, Hannah, 20, is studying design and spends all her free time studying. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, 16, is still in high school. Ernest's wife passed away 2 years prior to the events described, in 2014, due to cancer. Her death was a significant tragedy for the entire family. On her deathbed, she asked her son Matthew to take care of his siblings and to support their father as he aged. Matthew agreed to this promise. Like the rest of the family, he felt a deep sadness over their loss. However, shortly after their mother's death, the household began to deteriorate rapidly. Ernest lost his job, which led to a lack of finances. Within months, the situation became chaotic, with furniture and books scattered throughout every room. It is important to note that the youngest daughter was not involved in the events described. In contrast, Matthew was a sociable and attractive young man who was popular with girls. His turbulent personal life set him apart from his siblings. Unlike his siblings, who spent most of their time studying, Matthew was active and independent. He regularly went to the gym and participated in many outdoor sports such as soccer, basketball, and volleyball. He was also the only one in the family with a job, which allowed him to maintain his interests. In contrast, his siblings were quite shy. Hannah and Joshua preferred to spend their time alone studying and rarely interacted with each other, leading to a strained relationship between the children. On Monday, October 3, 2016, 23-year-old Matthew Fisher failed to report to work, which was unusual for him. He had always been a responsible employee, the sole provider for his family, and he never missed a shift. Concerned, his colleagues and friends tried to contact him, but their efforts were in vain. They then reached out to his family for information about his whereabouts. Matthew's father seemed unconcerned and jokingly shared a story about how Matthew had run away to travel in Eastern Australia with a wealthy girl he had admired from a magazine cover. This story is told by Joshua and Hannah as told by their father. Matthew's friends were suspicious of the situation. Matthew had never thought about it before. Matthew's car was at home, why didn't he drive away? His friends suspected Matthew's father and other family members of lying, but Ernest only responded with cheerful jokes. Later, Matthew's friends even tried to enter his house to gather any information about Matthew, but they were unsuccessful. They suspected something was wrong and believed that Matthew would not simply run away from home. They knew about his difficult relationship with his family, who often criticized him and felt jealous. At that time, Matthew also did not have a girlfriend, so his friends continued to search for clues about what really happened to him. They discovered that Matthew had gone missing on October 1st. He had failed to show up for an appointment with a friend and had not contacted anyone since. Meanwhile, Matthew's phone remained silent, causing his friends to worry, but his family seemed unconcerned. They stopped looking for him and ceased all contact. 17 days after his disappearance, Matthew's friends went to the police to report him missing and share their concerns about how his family was acting. The police took their statements and attempted to call Matthew, but his phone was turned off, making it impossible to locate him. The police quickly contacted Matthew's father, Ernest. He repeated the story he had shared with Matthew's friends, that Matthew had run off with a new girlfriend. However, the police found Ernest's lack of concern for his son suspicious. They believed Matthew's car was still at the house, making it impossible for him to leave without it. Additionally, they were unable to find the new girlfriend. After reviewing Matthew's messages, the police found no evidence to support the father's story. On October 22nd, they called Ernest into the police station for questioning. He initially stands by his statement, but when the police confront him about Matthew's death, claiming that they have substantial evidence, Ernest's story begins to become confusing. The police indicated that they had good reason to believe that Matthew was dead and had not left the house. At the 90th minute of interrogation, Ernest took a short break and then suddenly confessed that he killed his son because he had been swearing at him and insulting him. Ernest claimed he felt there was no other solution and could only think of murder. Ernest said that Matthew frequently threatened to use violence against Ernest and Matthew's siblings. Ernest also mentioned that Matthew often accused him of not getting his mother to the hospital in time for cancer treatment, which might have saved her, and blamed him for her death. This blame frustrated Ernest. After speaking with Ernest's other children, Joshua and Hannah, the police discovered that they were also present at the crime scene and assisted their father in covering up the incident. On October 1st, 2016, a tragic event occurred. On that day, Ernest had planned to drive to a friend's house to watch the final of a football match. At the same time, his son Matthew needed a car to run some errands. Although Matthew had his own car, the situation caused a conflict between them, leading to a horrific incident that occurred between 11 o'clock and 11:30 in the morning. Unable to bear the argument with his son, Ernest went to the stables in the backyard and took 2 knives. When he returned home, he found Matthew in Joshua's room and attacked him, inflicting multiple stab wounds. One knife pierced Matthew's heart and lung. After the attack, Ernest left the room, leaving his son bleeding on the floor. Meanwhile, his other children, Joshua and Hannah, were eating lunch in the living room. They ran to the sound and found Matthew lying on the floor, covered in blood and unresponsive. Hannah suggested they call the police, but her father strongly opposed the idea. Ernest managed to convince her not to go through with it. Instead, he went into the backyard to dig a grave while Hannah and Joshua remained frozen in place. Ernest, standing beside his dead son, is more worried about missing a soccer game with his friends than losing his son. After digging the grave, Ernest returned to the house and spoke to his children. He asked them to help clean up the crime scene and bury Matthew in the backyard while he was away. He then calmly got ready and left to enjoy a soccer game with his friends, seemingly without remorse for having just harmed a family member. Remarkably, Hannah and Joshua complied with their father's request. They meticulously cleaned up the blood in the room with cleaning supplies. The room was covered in blood, with bloodstains on the walls and furniture, indicative of the brutal attack on his son. Fearing a similar fate, Joshua and Hannah followed their father's orders without question. They first used bleach to wipe down the walls, then the furniture, carpets, and floors. They cleaned the room thoroughly and burned anything that could not be wiped clean to remove potential evidence. As Joshua and Hannah entered the backyard, they decided to dig deeper than the grave their father had hastily dug. This was important to ensure the body was more securely hidden. Since Matthew was quite large, they had difficulty moving him. They dragged him on a stepladder and across the lawn to the grave, where they dumped him and buried him unceremoniously. They then returned home, showered, changed their clothes, and cleaned up the area. Ernest returned home about 5 hours later. He checked to make sure the children had cleaned up the blood in the room and disposed of the body, and he praised them for their efforts. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, 16, was visiting relatives on the day of the murder and did not witness the horrific incident. When asked how hard he stabbed his son, Ernest replied, "Very hard. Because he wanted to stab his son to death. If Matthew had attacked back, Ernest will die. Because Matthew was stronger than him." When the police asked Ernest how many injuries he had caused to his son, he replied, "You should dig him up and find out." When told he was going to be arrested for murder, Ernest laughed and joked, showing no concern about the situation. The police asked him why he had not considered other options for dealing with his son. Ernest claimed that he had no other choice. The police suggested he could have contacted the police to help remove his son from their home or sought a safe place for his family. Ernest laughed again, saying he didn't want to spend money and was against moving. He viewed killing his son as the only way to free his family. After this admission, he led the police to the location of the body. Upon searching the family's yard, they discovered the Matthew buried there, as the father had indicated. A month had passed since Matthew's disappearance, and only 10 days had gone by since his friends reported it to the police. The most shocking part was that the father, while giving his testimony, laughed and joked about his murdered son, showing no remorse for his actions. He firmly believed he was justified. Ernest, 65, Joshua, 26, and Hannah, 20, were all arrested and charged with murder and concealing the body. Matthew was later buried next to his mother. Funds were raised to cover the funeral costs, supplemented by Matthew's savings. He bought a large headstone for his mother, while the rest of his family seemed unconcerned, not even having a headstone. Police were skeptical of the motive given. Ernest considered Matthew a danger to the entire family, leading him to decide to eliminate him. Friends and acquaintances of the Matthew consistently described him as a good person who had never exhibited aggression or violence. It was puzzling that if Matthew truly posed a threat to the family, they had never filed a complaint with the police prior to this tragedy. The police interviewed all members of the Ernest family to uncover the true motives and piece together the sequence of events. The police spoke to Ernest again, who claimed that Matthew was a cruel and dangerous man who regularly used drugs. He said that he had to kill Matthew to end the atmosphere of fear that Matthew had created in their family. Joshua was very emotional during the interview. He cried as he described the image of the crime scene and younger brother's bloody body in his mind. In the room, he saw his father holding 2 knives and standing over Matthew's body. He did not see the struggle or the moment of the murder. Hannah remained composed during her interrogation but repeatedly recounted the same story. She expressed concerns that her brother Matthew was very different from the rest of the family and could be a threat. He had often yelled at her and had used physical force once during their teenage years when they got into a fight. However, Hannah could not point to any other incidents that proved Matthew was dangerous. She admitted that she felt remorse and guilt over the situation. Hannah wished she could go back in time and call the police immediately after the incident. At that moment, Joshua and Hannah were afraid of their angry father and did not speak up against him. However, they could not understand why they continued to live with Ernest and their Matthew's body in the yard as if nothing had happened. If they felt guilty, why didn't they go to the police later on? The hearing for the case began in mid-2018, and it took 2 years for the investigation to gather and analyze all the materials. During the trial, the Ernest and their defense argued that the murder was an act of self-defense, claiming that Matthew posed a serious threat to the entire family. The lawyers for the Ernest spoke negatively about the Matthew, portraying him as a violent and aggressive person who had attacked them. However, no one provided convincing evidence of Matthew's aggression or any real threat he had posed. No one noticed any bruises on Hannah or Joshua, and it is unclear what caused the family conflict or whether Ernest was the one who started it. It is also worrying that Ernest chose to kill his loved one rather than seek police help to resolve the issue or simply remove him from the house if he truly posed a threat. In court, Ernest Fisher appeared unusually calm, which raised suspicions. He did not seem to show any remorse for what had happened and did not feel any sadness for his son. Ernest was often rude in court, insulting everyone involved, and was frequently reprimanded for his behavior. Family acquaintances described Ernest as a ruthless person, and several testified that they had never seen Matthew show any hostility toward his relatives. His friends disputed Ernest's testimony, insisting that Matthew was not aggressive and did not use drugs. Matthew regularly underwent random drug and alcohol testing at work and had never had any problems. Friends noted that after their mother's death, Matthew's relationship with their father and siblings became very strained. Joshua and Hannah were often depressed. They rarely left the house, rarely changed clothes, did not work, and kept the house in disarray. They hardly communicated with each other and were heavily dependent on Matthew for support. Matthew had to take on the role of primary provider for the family. Initially, he understood the situation, but this temporary role lasted too long. Joshua and Hannah were content with their current situation and did not want to look for work. Matthew felt frustrated with his family because he was tired of being responsible for the other adult members of the family, which felt like a burden. Despite his efforts to comfort them, they were in vain. They preferred to live a closed life, relying on him, and creating more tension in their relationships. Matthew's friends dismissed the idea that he was aggressive or hurtful to his father. Although he could have stayed away from his family's problems for a long time, he chose to stay and support them. He promised his mother before she died that he would take care of them. Matthew, like anyone else, can sometimes lose his temper during arguments. However, he doesn't seem to be a cruel or violent person. He even has a tattoo on his arm that says, "Family is everything." Despite the many testimonies presented by the prosecution, Ernest's lawyer maintained that the father had acted in self-defense. Meanwhile, Matthew's siblings believed their father killed him to protect them, and they supported him during the trial. They were not charged as accomplices to the murder. Instead, they faced charges related to the disposal of the body and evidence. Further information suggested that Ernest had been planning to eliminate his son for a long time. It was discovered that he had purchased 2 knives well in advance, which he had saved specifically for the act of stabbing Matthew, indicating a premeditated intent. At the end of a 3-week trial, the jury reached a verdict. After deliberating for 2 hours, Ernest Fisher was found guilty of premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Ernest showed no emotion when the sentence was announced. The judge also highlighted that the defendant did not show any remorse for his actions and criticized Ernest for forcing his children into a horrific choice. He should not have placed the children in such a difficult situation. Joshua and Hannah, out of deep loyalty and fear of their father, made a poor decision. The judge noted that one of the worst experiences for anyone is to be harmed by their own loving family. Joshua Fisher received a 4-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 2 years, while Hannah was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months, eligible for parole after 22 months. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Heidi Broussard. 33 years old Heidi Broussard worked as a waitress in a small restaurant in Buda, Texas, which has a population of around 7,000 people. She was also attending veterinary school, aspiring to become a veterinarian. Recently, she got engaged to her boyfriend, Shane Curry, after being together for 10 years. They met while working together and quickly fell in love. They has a 5-year-old son named Silas, who was born while they were still living in Louisiana. Heidi's best friend, Megan Firemuska, is also 33 years old and works as a wedding planner. The two met at a children's camp when they were 11 and have been best friends for 20 years. In early 2019, when Heidi announced she was pregnant with her second child, Megan shared that she was also expecting. Heidi was thrilled about their pregnancies and looked forward to spending time with Megan, sharing parenting experiences, and supporting each other. They began spending more time together, planning every moment of the pregnancy, bought baby clothes, cribs, and diapers, attended childbirth classes, and even went swimming together. Megan was present at the births of both of Heidi's children, including baby Margot in November 2019. They were so close that Heidi hoped their daughters would grow up to be best friends, just like them. At 7:30 a.m. on December 12, 2019, Heidi dropped off her 5-year-old son, Silas, at school. By 2 p.m., the school called her fiancé, Shane, to inform him that Heidi had not returned to pick up Silas, which was unusual since she was never late. Concerned, Shane quickly drove to the school, picked up Silas, and headed home. He expected that when he returned home, he would find Heidi and Margot at home. He thought maybe she had simply fallen asleep and forgotten to pick up Silas. However, when Shane arrived home, he was shocked to find no one in the house. He started to worry, thinking that Heidi might have taken Margot for a walk and lost track of time. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Then he considered that she might be with her best friend, Megan, who was about to give birth. Shane called Megan, but she said she hadn't seen Heidi that day, which was odd since they usually met daily for walks. As Shane searched the house for clues, he noticed that Heidi had left behind all of Margot's essentials, diapers, food, her wallet with money and cards, and the car keys. It suddenly hit him that something was seriously wrong. Heidi never went out with Margot without these items. Shane grew increasingly worried. Then, he called 911 around 7 p.m. to report Heidi and their newborn daughter's disappearance, Margot. The police arrived quickly and began searching for them. They examined the house and found no signs of a break-in or struggle. Everything was neatly organized. Initially, the officer suspected Shane because the husbands are often involved in such cases. However, Shane had an alibi. He had been at work all day and was cleared of suspicion. Despite this, some people still suspected him. During an interview, people scrutinized Shane's behavior, consider him a guilty person. Shane recounted that he last spoke to Heidi on the phone around 8:30 a.m. She told him she had taken Silas to school, and then, she with Margot attended a book fair. She bought several books she had been eager to read. She also purchased children's books to read to their son, Silas. She is passionate about reading books and had been building her own library at home. After their conversation, Shane returned to work, and Heidi did not contact him again. Detectives started to thoroughly investigate the house and the nearby area. They found that Heidi's car was parked in the garage. According to Shane, she exclusively drove her own car and never used taxis. This indicated that she hadn't gone far and was likely still in the vicinity. Both she and Margot have been placed on the search list, and a major search is underway in the area. While checking the surrounding area, investigators discovered a surveillance camera at a neighbor's home. They asked the neighbor to provide video footage from that camera. Then began reviewing camera video footage and interviewing nearby residents. The videos show Heidi, Margot, and Silas arriving at school at 7:30 a.m. Later, she and Margot returned home. A while later, they left the house, getting into a silver car. The video quality was poor, making it impossible to identify the car's license plate or model. This was the last sighting of Heidi alive. A neighbor reported seeing she in their apartment complex that morning, carrying a small child and approaching a parked car. A woman exited the car and greeted her. Both women then got into the car with the child and drove away. The disappearances of Heidi and her daughter, Margot, were linked to a woman. The police officer began to identify this unknown woman. Shane mentioned that the silver car matched the description of his friend's vehicle. He was convinced the woman in the car was his friend Megan, as he believed Heidi would never get into a stranger's car. Megan had a key to their home, given to her for emergencies. Detectives reached out to Megan, but she denied any involvement in the disappearance. Megan also told the police that she had not seen Heidi that day and shared some other information. She suspected Shane was involved in the situation. Heidi had previously confided in her about experiencing physical violence from he. Heidi claimed that Shane drank heavily and was abusive. Although Heidi wanted to leave him multiple times, she discovered she was pregnant for the second time and decided to give him another chance. Shane proposed, and they started planning their wedding. For a while, their relationship seemed peaceful. However, it seems that Shane has abused Heidi again. Megan showed photos of Heidi with bruises, but many people were skeptical. Upon closer examination, one photo revealed a trace from an IV drip on her arm, while another showed a small bruise that likely came from everyday activities. These are not the same as signs of domestic violence. There is no proof that Shane attacked Heidi. Police records showed no calls to Heidi's home for help. Shane denied the allegations, asserting that he loved Heidi. They were preparing for marriage, and he maintained that there had never been any violence in their relationship. Investigators searched for additional CCTV cameras in the vicinity and discovered several nearby. They collected the footage and began analyzing it. The quality of the recordings was better than expected, allowing the detective to identify a car. It was clearly determined to be Megan's car. Shane identified her. It turns out that she met Heidi that day, although she had previously denied it. She was the last person to see Heidi and Margot before they went missing. Therefore, she became the main suspect in the case. Investigators kept an eye on Megan's home. They noticed her boyfriend, Christopher, leaving and decided to follow him, but he was just going to the store to buy baby formula. The detectives approached him and showed him a photo of baby Margot. He recognized Margot and he confirmed that Megan had referred to the child as her child. Margot is in the house with her. It is clear that she is involved in this incident. The police obtained a search warrant and returned to Megan's house in Houston. When they knocked on the door, Megan opened it, holding a baby monitor in her hand and looking very worried. Inside, a baby was sleeping in a crib. Megan claimed the infant was hers and insisted she had no involvement in the disappearance of Heidi and Margot, but no one believed her. Shane recognized his daughter, Margot, by her face and clothes. The Texas Rangers detectives noticed Megan's car outside, the same silver vehicle believed to have been used by Heidi when she left. As they approached the car, they noticed the stench of a decomposing body, a smell they were familiar with. Opening the trunk revealed a horrific discovery. Heidi's body was inside a large sports bag and in poor condition. Megan was immediately arrested, and DNA testing proved that she was involved in the incident. Margot was returned to her father, Shane. Shane couldn't believe that Megan, Heidi's best friend for over 20 years, could have killed her. They had a close and trusting relationship, rarely argued, and no one thought this would happen. After Heidi went missing, Megan called Shane daily to check on the investigation. Shane began to feel that Megan was overly fixated on Heidi, resenting the time Heidi spent with her husband and children without her. During the investigation, it became clear that Megan was actively involved in searching for Heidi. She researched Amber Alerts and the investigation online, searching for Heidi's name 162 times. An autopsy later revealed that Heidi had been strangled, leading the case to be classified as a homicide, and the investigation continued. Megan informed investigators that she had given birth at a birthing center in Woodland, north of Houston, on December 10th. Just days before Heidi's disappearance, and had brought the baby home the same day. However, when questioned, she could not recall the name of the center, making it difficult for investigators to verify her story. The police contacted all maternity hospitals in the state but found no record of a woman named Megan giving birth. It was discovered that she had not visited any medical facility and lied to her boyfriend, Christopher, about her weekly medical checkup. Investigators tracked the phone records of both Heidi and Megan, revealing that they had traveled together from Buda to Megan's house in Houston, where Heidi's body was found in Megan's car. The car had been parked near Christopher's house for an entire week, and Megan drove it daily, despite the overwhelming smell of decomposition from the body inside. How did Christopher, Megan's boyfriend, not notice the smell? He was later questioned by investigators. He explained that he and Megan had been together for about 2 years, but in March 2019, he grew tired of the relationship and decided to break up. He asked her to move out, but she refused, claiming she had nowhere else to go. Feeling sorry for her, he allowed her to stay, and they lived in separate rooms in his house with minimal communication. Christopher found it difficult to kick Megan out of the house, and when he learned that she was pregnant, he decided to give their relationship another chance. He touched her belly a few times during the pregnancy but didn't realize it was a false pregnancy. He admitted that he had never seen her belly when she was undressed, due to the tension in their relationship. But he noticed it was growing and assumed it was real. Whenever Megan had a doctor's appointment, Christopher was not there and she did not invite him. This made him feel comfortable because he did not want to go with her. He was also away during the birth and only learned that Megan had given birth to a daughter while walking on the beach. When he returned home and saw her holding a baby, Megan claimed the birth went smoothly and that she hadn't seen a doctor. Her family video called her and remarked that she looked happy with the baby. They had visited Megan a few days before the birth and thought she looked pregnant. She has a big belly. In reality, Megan had never been pregnant, she had been pretending the entire time. Megan faked her pregnancy, deceiving everyone, including her boyfriend Christopher. This was part of a troubling scheme to take Heidi's daughter, Margot. This plan was devised by her to keep her boyfriend. When Christopher learned the truth, he broke up with her and moved in with his mother for a while because he was being hounded by the press and couldn't live in peace. He was not charged with any crime, as police were confident he had no knowledge of Megan's intentions. He was only involved in the case as a witness. Megan grew up in a family of 9 siblings, and her youngest brother was only 9 years old. She always dreamed of having many children and a big family. But she cannot get pregnant. Her relationship with her boyfriend Christopher also quickly ended. Overwhelmed by despair, she developed a horrific plan. When she learned that Heidi was pregnant, she is extremely jealous of Heidi and dreams of being pregnant. She decided that Heidi's baby would be the solution to her problem. She tricked Heidi into getting into her car, then drove them far from home. Once there, she attacked and strangled Heidi, placing Heidi's body in the trunk before returning home. As the search for Heidi began, Megan pretends to be sad because his best friend is missing. She even contacted multiple local TV stations, urging them to cover the story, so that no one would think she was involved. Megan was later charged with kidnapping Heidi and Margot, as well as murder, and she faced the death penalty. It was revealed that Megan had a prior conviction for theft. The charges indicated that she had originally planned not only to kidnap Margot but also to murder Heidi to accomplish this. She realized that Heidi would not willingly give up her child and was prepared to commit murder to get what she wanted. According to Megan, Heidi's second pregnancy was unexpected, and at the time, her financial situation was challenging. Initially, she considered terminating the pregnancy. Megan asked her not to do this, and even asked she to give Megan's the baby, but no one took Megan's words seriously. They thought she was joking. This might have been when Megan devised her plan. Ultimately, Heidi decided against terminating the pregnancy, and she and Shane chose to keep the child. However, Shane feels confused and doesn't know how to manage life with two children. Shane suspected that someone else was involved in the case. For at that time, Heidi was bigger and stronger than Megan, and Megan wouldn't have been able to handle everything on her own. He thought someone must have assisted Megan with the murder. He also did not understand how Megan could have stuffed Heidi's body into a bag and put it in the trunk of the car by himself. Heidi's family also suspects that Megan had help, but they don't think it was Christopher, as he wanted to break up with her. They believe Megan may have manipulated him into staying because of the child, suggesting he became a victim of her deception. A witness who claimed to have seen someone else in the car with Megan and Heidi, but this person did not see their face. Megan was in the front passenger seat, Heidi was in the back, and a stranger was driving. However, Shane never confirmed this information. Megan told Heidi and Shane that she had given birth to a girl on December 8th, but she did not show the baby to anyone, not even Heidi. Megan also did not share pictures of her newborn daughter on social media and very secretive about it. It is rumored that she had a nightmare about someone kidnapping her child, which frightened her and she decided not to show the baby to anyone. Before she disappeared, Heidi shared her worries with Shane about Megan. She found it strange that Megan didn't invite her family, although she invited Megan to attend the birth twice. She wanted to be with Megan at this crucial moment, and she felt offended by Megan's choice to keep it private. Megan explained that she was superstitious and preferred not to share the moment with others. Additionally, Shane recalled another odd incident. When Heidi was discharged from the hospital after giving birth, Megan, who was supposedly 37 weeks pregnant, can't leave the baby and constantly asks to hold the baby in her arms. She was very concerned about the child, which made many people suspicious, but at that time no one seemed to notice. The reasons behind Megan leaving Heidi's body in the trunk of her car instead of hiding it elsewhere remain unclear. In court, Megan continued to insist that the child Margot was hers. During a psychiatric evaluation, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. However, she was ultimately deemed sane and competent to stand trial. Throughout the trial, the evidence overwhelmingly pointed to her guilt, indicating that she had carefully planned the murder over several months. Following her lawyer's advice, Megan agreed to a plea bargain with the prosecution in order to receive a lighter sentence. To avoid the death penalty, she gave up her right to appeal. Heidi's family agreed to the decision to avoid protracted legal battles. Megan Fire-Muska was sentenced to 55 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Welcome back. detectives, let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Fernando Federico Reyes. The exact birth date of Fernando Federico Reyes is unknown, but he was born around 1983 in the village of Pampa Blanca, located in the El Carmen department of Jujuy province in northeastern Argentina. He was the youngest of 5 children of Orlando Reese and his wife, Tate. Records indicate that his older brother was named Diego. There is little information about Fernando's childhood and adolescence. In 2008, Fernando, then in his 20s, met 14-year-old Dana Estrella Belén Martinez. Despite their age difference, they quickly developed a relationship. Dana, born in 1994, grew up in the same village and had a close relationship with Fernando's family. She was known for her cheerful, energetic personality and for spreading positivity to those around her. Dana loved the nightlife and often attended parties. Their friendship quickly developed into a serious relationship and they began living together. They moved to the city of Pampa Blanca, and Fernando made a living as a taxi driver. A year and a half after moving in, the couple finally contacted Fernando's relatives to tell them about their new home. They shared how their lives had changed and reassured his family that everything was okay. Some time later, Fernando began to keep in regular contact with his mother and often sought her advice, especially during conflicts with Dana. At the beginning of their journey, both Fernando and Dana had frequent job changes, which affected their finances. As a result, they were evicted from their home in Lario. Undeterred, they moved to Las Nagas in the province of Belén. In this small village, they rented a small house owned by a man named Jose Cruz. Once they settled in, the neighbors quickly became aware of the couple's financial difficulties. Although the villagers themselves were not wealthy, they organized a fundraiser to provide Fernando and Dana with clothes, shoes, and food. The couple was extremely grateful for their kindness. The couple made new friends, including Maria and Simon. At the same time, Fernando's relationship with Dana was getting worse, which did not escape the notice of their neighbors. As arguments became frequent, the couple decided to separate. However, Fernando couldn't leave the children, so they all continued to live together under one roof. Over time, Dana began to threaten Fernando, warning him that if he left her and their children, she would report him to the police for violence. This behavior made their relationship even more complicated. As he usually did, Fernando reached out to his relatives to explain what was happening, including Dana's threats and his wish to divorce her. His parents, who lived in Jujuy, were concerned about their son's family issues. Dana begins to develop a close relationship with Simon and Maria. Dana's provocative actions increased the conflict between her and Fernando. In late November 2022, Jose, the owner of the house Dana and Fernando rent, invites Fernando to the Virgen del Valle de Catamarca celebration, which will take place from Sunday, December 4th to Thursday, December 8th. Fernando agreed to go. On Saturday night, December 3rd, there was a dance at the San Roca Club. Dana attended with Simon and Maria. When Fernando arrived, he and Dana got into an argument, but it quickly calmed down. People around witnessed the incident but did not intervene. Finally, frustrated and angry, Fernando decided to leave and headed toward a deserted area. Fernando was suddenly attacked by Dana, Simon, and Maria, who hit him several times on the head with blunt objects. He fell and died on the spot. The attackers then set fire to it and threw Fernando's body into it. One of the residents of Las Nagas saw the fire in the field but did not think much of it. Eventually, it became clear that the fire did not completely burn the body. The three then placed the remains in bags and went to the banks of the Belén River. There, they dug 2 holes and buried 2 bags containing Fernando's body. Dana, Maria, and Simon returned to the party, where they drank, danced, and had fun until dawn, as if nothing had happened and without arousing the suspicions of the locals. On Sunday, December 4th, Jose was waiting for his friend Fernando to arrive for a party they had planned. As time passed and Fernando still hadn't shown up, Jose began to worry and reached out to Dana for clarification. She informed him that Fernando had gone to visit his family. Jose was left feeling confused and bewildered. He couldn't understand why Fernando hadn't told him about this. Days went by, but Fernando still didn't contact Jose. Concerned that something might be wrong, Jose asked Dana again for more information. It was then that she revealed that Fernando and Dana had decided to separate. The neighbors found it odd that the loud arguments in the couple's home suddenly stopped. Additionally, no one had seen Fernando for several days. Then, Dana told Jose that Fernando had gone back to the province of Larioca and found a well-paying job there. However, as she tried to dodge uncomfortable questions, her answers became more vague and unconvincing. This led Jose to doubt her stories. Over time, the children also noticed their father's absence and innocently asked their mother about it. Dana shared the heartbreaking news that their dad had died and was buried by the river. The children, feeling disheartened, did not fully understand what was happening. They began to bring flowers to the spot where their father had died. Jose decided to talk to the neighbors to gather information about Fernando's disappearance. 2 residents reported seeing the couple arguing. At a party later, another neighbor mentioned a fire that had broken out during the night. Meanwhile, Dana continued to deceive Fernando's family, claiming that he had abandoned her and the children. She also began asking them for money to support the children. In mid-April 2023, Jose, determined to uncover the truth, sought to verify whether Fernando had indeed returned to Jujuri and to his family. Fernando's brother, Diego, ignored the messages and then blocked Jose. Despite this setback, Jose persisted and contacted Fernando's sister in his quest for answers. Unfortunately, he also failed her, as she did not trust his intentions. In late April, a party was held 2 hours away from La Sinaga. Dana and Fernando were guests at the event. Dana left her children at home and locked them inside. When she arrived at the party alone, the other guests became concerned because they had not seen Fernando since November, and he still had not shown up. Then Jose, the landlord, heard noises coming from the house. He had a spare key, so he decided to check inside. There, he found the small children left alone. One of the girls told him something that made him realize that he needed to call the police. On May 5, 2023, Jose reported Fernando missing. A large-scale search operation began shortly thereafter, involving police, forensic experts, and search dogs. The first day of the search yielded no results. Dana was taken to the police station for questioning. When the police arrived at her home, they were greeted by her eldest son, who told the same story as his sister. The police focused their search on the area near the river. During questioning, Dana maintained her previous statement about Fernando's trip to Jujuri, now claiming that he left because his brother Diego had died. To verify this claim, the police contacted Diego's relatives. After speaking with them, it became clear that Dana had lied, leading to her arrest on May 7th. The police focused their search on the location indicated by Fernando's son. They found a black plastic bag containing charred human remains approximately 160 to 165 centimeters tall and in a state of decomposition. Forensic doctors later confirmed that the remains were indeed human. The police sent the body to the forensic laboratory to confirm the identity of the deceased. This evidence prompted Dana to confess to the murder, especially when she was told that remaining silent could result in a life sentence. The interrogation, which was attended by prosecutor Marina, lasted about 8 hours. Dana attempted to explain her actions in a way that minimized her guilt, claiming that she had acted in self-defense. She said that Fernando, 39, had harassed her, causing her to hit him without intending to kill him. She had misjudged the force of her blows, and when she realized that she had accidentally killed Fernando, she panicked and decided to cover up the crime. In addition, she was quick to reveal the identities of her accomplices in the early stages of the investigation. On the morning of May 8, 2023, after questioning, the prosecutor charged Dana with murder. Dana was arrested at the Belen police station. Meanwhile, Maria and Simon were charged with murder. Both were detained at the Belen police station. Dana, Maria, and Simon's cell phones were confiscated for thorough analysis. The police examined calls, messages, photos, videos, and other relevant documents. Fernando's family was extremely distressed. They were shocked by Dana's cruel actions. Fernando's family traveled to Catamarca to assist in the investigation. During this trip, they provided DNA samples and found solace in being reunited with the children. The children's grandmother took them home, bringing comfort to Fernando's relatives. On May 18, Simon and Maria appeared before Prosecutor Marina, both represented by the same lawyer. They firmly denied any involvement in the incident. The lawyer argued that the testimony was unreliable, claiming that the evidence against Simon and Maria was insufficient. A few days later, the defense requested the results of psychological and psychiatric evaluations of the suspects. On May 31, the judge granted the request, resulting in the suspension of the preliminary hearing. Prosecutor Marina requested that Dana, Simon, and Maria remain in custody until a trial date is set, given the seriousness of the crimes. Fernando's family attended the hearing to support the prosecution, represented by a lawyer. The hearing was originally scheduled for June 13, 2023, but was postponed and the next tentative date is currently unknown. Dana, Simon, and Maria, who are accused of murdering Fernando, will face justice for their actions. Fernando's relatives hope for a fair outcome.